And opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Wednesday, and Wednesday is always exciting around here because we got a lot going on. We're going to be with you for the next 3 hours live, talking about topics having to do with autism and how you can be more efficient, more effective in helping your child on the spectrum to reach their highest potential. Whether you're a teacher, a parent, a practitioner, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, we know that if you're watching this show, chances are that you have somewhere in your life a child that you adore who is on the autism spectrum, and you're hoping to facilitate them reaching their highest potential. Really, isn't that what we're all here for? So we have a lot of different topics that we talk about here. In particular, you'll find that we talk a lot about ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis. There's a good reason for that. It's because ABA is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. Isn't that awesome? And not only is it effective, and it's been scientifically proven to be effective, it's effective for all of our kids. So if you have a child who is on the spectrum and very profoundly affected, you're going to be able to see progress. Yes, I said that, I meant it. Scientifically proven. If your child is on the spectrum and there are much more mild effects to it, but there are things that are getting in their way, preventing them from being able to have the rich, full life that they would like to have and that you would like for them to have, ABA is still effective. That, the point of ABA, and I'm not an ABA expert, but what I have seen and what I have heard over and over and over again is that it's about behavior, and since we're all engaged in behavior, it's effective for all of us, not just our kids on the spectrum. So that's a really good thing. I think it's one of the best parenting trainings that you're ever going to be able to find anywhere. So I mentioned that I am not an expert in ABA, I'm not an expert in behavior, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a nutritionist. I am a former educator. I was a teacher, I taught college and taught junior high for 5 minutes, but mostly high school. And I'm a mom. My son was diagnosed with autism when he was 2.5. He now just turned 9. And we have a child who speaks and responds and goes to school and is completely included in a class full of children who develop typically and is thriving. And we have that. We are fortunate enough to have that because we had access to early intervention. Our son had the highest quality of ABA therapy here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and we had it for the right amount of time. And that is, a wonderful thing for me. Let's not kid. I know that I'm incredibly lucky, but it's part of the reason why I'm here too, because I believe that my child is the sun, the moon, and the stars, right? But I am no more deserving as a mother, and my child is no more deserving as a child with autism than your child. And so I'm here because I believe that there is help and hope for you and for your child. And if you'll stick with me and tell me what you need, I'm going to help you to chase it down. That's what I want to do for you. I have access to experts on your behalf. And if you write in questions, I'm going to find the expert who has the answer, or knows the expert who has the answer, or knows the expert who's working on it for you. Because that's my debt to pay forward, right? Because we were so lucky. I believe that this playing field needs to be leveled, that all of our children need to have access to ABA, And I believe that all of us as parents and teachers and practitioners owe it to ourselves and to our children to arm ourselves with the tools that will help our children. So ABA is not this cookie cutter thing of, well, step 1 is this, and step 2 is this, and step 3 is this, and we all end up in the same place. It's nothing like that. All of our kids are different. And so we get a tool belt full of tools, and then we have to apply them in a very creative way. And we can do that, right? Si se puede. We can do that. You and I can do that with some help. And that's what I'm here for, is to try to help you to get access to those things that you need. I want you to know that the people who are involved in this show that's a really heartfelt mission. So we count on your input. And that's really what this is a conversation where you give us input and we sort it out and output back to you. So there are lots of different ways that you can participate in the conversation. If you're watching us right now on autism-live.com, then you'll see across the top of your screen, it either says live or rebroadcast. If it says live, there is a little box there that says your questions. You can type in there. You don't have to log on. There's no cost. You just put your cursor there, type in a question, hit enter, and it shows up magically right here on my screen. You want to try it right now? Go ahead, go for it. Say hi to me, say boo, say whatever you want to say, but it works. And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Oh, somebody said boo. Okay, so in any case, if you're watching and it says rebroadcast, well, there's still lots of ways to get in touch with us. It's a little bit of delayed gratification though, right? One of the great ways you can get a hold of us is by email. And when you send us an email, we'll answer your question on the next available live show, but we'll also send you back a typewritten response so that you don't necessarily have to catch that moment when we answered your question. So please participate via email. We really love it when you guys do that. It's not the only way to participate, though. You can call us. We have a phone line, and we take phone calls. If we're not here, the answering machine will take it, and we'll get back to you as soon as we're back in the office. If we're live when you call and you want to be patched into the show to be talking to me and whatever experts we have in the room, you absolutely can do that. We would love it if you did that. If you're shy and you don't want to talk on the air, that's okay. There are people standing by waiting to take your phone call and to support you in whatever it is that you're doing. You can also Skype in with us. So if you have computer capability and want to Skype in, for a lot of our friends overseas, this is a really great, inexpensive way to talk to us in real time and to talk to an expert in real time. If you have camera capability and you're willing to have your image up here on the screen with us, you can also do that. We love that. We've been Skyping with more and more people, moms and dads, bloggers, experts around the world. It's a really fun way for us to be able to all get together here in one place. You can also use Facebook to talk to us. We really love that. Our page is kind of new, so we appreciate it if you give us a like while you're there. We really appreciate that. But you can answer the question of the day there. And not only are we able to see your answer, but then the world is able to see your answer to the question of the day, and I think that's a learning opportunity. You can also tweet with us. We like your Twitter suggestions, your answer to the question of the day on Twitter, all of those different ways. We really, really are getting better, I hope, at the Twitter thing. It's a new thing for me. What can I tell you? I mentioned that there are lots of different ways to watch us. You can be watching us on autism-live.com, but there are many other ways to watch us too. You can be watching us on Blip TV. One of the great things about the other ways to watch us is that you can pause, you can rewind, search a topic, go back and watch something, an expert that we had on 2 months ago. Really exciting to be able to do that because I know as a mom, your day is full and you got somebody coming to the door to do therapy, you got to get in the car to do OT, so, your child is playing for a couple of minutes, you can catch a couple of minutes, and then it's, time to interact again. So being able to pause is a really great feature. You can pause also on YouTube. We have a whole channel. You can go there and search. Man, there's so much information there, and it's all free. All free, so you can take your time, don't have to be overwhelmed. You can say, well, I really don't need to know about toileting today. What I really need to know about is self-injurious behavior. You can pick and choose what you want to do. But that when you're ready to toilet, there's stuff about toileting there. By the way, you can also download us for free on iTunes. Whole episodes, picture and sound. I know I keep promising you sound only is coming. It is. I don't know what the holdup is, but I know you guys have been asking for the audio only. We're getting it. It's a coming. And you can also watch us on Ustream. If there is a way that you would like to watch us that I've not talked about, would you do me a favor and let us know? Because we want to be available to you in all the different ways that are conducive for you, because that's what it's about. It's about you being able to tune in the way that helps you. Okay, and we don't know everything here. I certainly don't know everything. Speaking of which, we like to start every morning with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is the time of day when we take on one word, one phrase, one anagram, and demystify it, hopefully. We need to make friends with the jargon because it's very specific, right? It's either educational or psychology jargon or ABA jargon, but it all relates back to our child and what we need to accomplish with our child, what we need to do with our child, what we need to implement with our child. So we have to understand these terms. And there's a reason for jargon, always, right? Because it facilitates being able to communicate in a really quick way. I waitressed my way through high school, college, and graduate school, and I loved waitress jargon, right? Nobody else in the world would have ever understood it, but it made it quicker, right? You understood when you were there on the floor and somebody said you got a two-top over there with a curtain they got to make. You know, you understood what that meant. It's the same thing, but a different arena. That's, I think, ever so much more important. So we have to make friends with jargon, if for no other reason, for our children. For our children. I did not plan on learning a whole bunch of new terms at this point in my life, but alas, here we are. Okay, our phrase for the day is physical prompt. We've been talking a little bit about prompting this week. So let's take a look at our actual definition, and then we'll give you a working definition that won't be as specific, but hopefully will really help you to get a grasp on this term. Okay, so a physical prompt is an extra stimulus in the form of a physical guidance presented along with a discriminative stimulus which increases the likelihood of a correct response. And this, my friends, is why we have a working definition and not just the actual definition. Because you know what? Once you are on your way a little bit with ABA, this will actually make sense. But on your first day, when somebody says to you, well, make sure that you physically prompt them when they're doing that, and you go, okay, I don't think I quite understand what that is. This definition would not help you, right? You're going, extra stimulus, what? Okay, so let's take a look at our working definition, physically guiding the child through the desired response. I like to think of it as motoring them through it. So if you're saying to the child, come here, and the child is busy staring off into space or checking out their fingernail, or they're obsessing on the toy that's in front of them, and it's as though they didn't hear you at all. Because for a lot of us, on day one, that's the reality, right? But you know, we're not going to let it go with that, and we also don't want to turn it into a big battle, right? So we stay calm, cool, and collected, and we're going to physically guide them through the thing that we want them to do. Well, what I said was, come here. So the desired response that I want is that the child stands up and comes and stands right in front of me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to physically prompt them. Now this physically prompting, we want to be 100% clear, is not manhandling, right? It does not need to become a battle. And part of how the difference between a physical prompt and manhandling is that we're going to keep the touch as light as possible. We're going to stay emotionally neutral. We're not going to say anything while we're physically prompting. We're not going to go over and then go, this is the way you come here, right? We're not going to do that. We're going to go over and very gently, and I know sometimes the child turns into an octopus with 17 arms and is fighting to get away from us, but we're going to stay completely neutral so that it doesn't become a battle. We're going to defend ourselves so that we don't get hit in the face, right? But we're going to pick the child up and literally walk their feet over to the point we wanted to them. They go, that's coming here, good job. And then we're going to give them the opportunity to do it again and put them back where they were. and we're going to go back to where we were and say, come here. And the child probably isn't going to do it. We're going to go over and we're going to motor them through it. And in our heads, we're counting to 100. We're thinking of beaches and happy places and not taking it personally. I know the bigger the child, the harder it is. Now, sometimes physically prompting is not that exhausting, right? Depends on what the discriminative stimulus is that you gave and the behavior that you want. Remember that the SD, the discriminative stimulus, is what you say or do to start the lesson. You have something you say or do that tells the child, this is the behavior I want, and when you do that, you're going to get some sort of reward for it. So imagine that I'm saying to a child, say apple. Well, that's my SD, say apple. The desired response that I want is that the child says apple. And then I go, yay, and I give the child some sort of reward, whether it's a piece of a potato chip, a tickle on the belly, a ruffling of the hair, a hug, or I throw them up in the air, or I blow a bubble. I give them some sort of reward for it, right? Now, it's really hard to give a physical prompt when we're saying, say this. So, probably not the best example. What it might be for if I'm doing labels, receptive labels, and I say, here's a picture of an apple, and I say to the child, give me the apple. And the child has no idea what I want them to do. So I gently take their hand, grasp the card with their hand, right? Because they don't know to pick it up. And then I'm going to take, with my hand over their hand, grasping it, put the card in my hand and let go of their hand and say, good job. This is apple. Good job giving me apple. And then I'm going to try it again. And as we physically prompt, as with all prompts, as quickly as possible, we want to fade the prompt out. Right? So the next time I would say, give me the apple, and the child, and I physically prompt, I pointed, which is also a physical prompt, but a full physical prompt would be, grabbing a hold, gently though, right? Not manhandling. But so what I might do the next time is very gently take their hand and lead it over and not do the claw grasp to pick it up, right? That's still a physical prompt, but I'm starting to fade it back so that they need less and less. We don't want them to become dependent on the physical prompt. So eventually I might just touch their arm and touch the card. Now I'm really fading my physical prompt. Then I might point, and then I might do nothing. Right? And we want for the child to get it right all the time. So let's say that I do nothing and the child doesn't do it. Then I go back to the last physical prompt that worked. So if the last physical prompt that worked was pointing, I'm going to go back to that. But in any case, I think of it as motoring the child through it and then fading it back. That's a physical prompt. Prompts are always there to help the child get the right answer. It's not there to teach them a lesson that you will do it because I said you would and you will, right? Really important that we have the right mindset. That's going to make a difference in getting that compliance and having the child enjoy it. Remember that in ABA, principle number 1 is that in order to have any behavior maintained, in other words, doing it over and over and over again, it has to be rewarding. So if we're getting into a thing where it's all struggle, and there's no reward, the child is not going to want to do it again. It's going to become aversive. We are going to have times when the child doesn't want to do something. Later on today, we're going to watch the A word, and there's a really good example early on of the A word where the therapist asks Jack Riley to sit down on the chair because they're going to start a lesson. And he doesn't want to. And he's been doing well with this, and he's been compliant with it, and been happy, cheerful, and thrilled to sit for her, but he does not want to. And so she says, sit down, and she takes him and physically puts him in the chair, and it's a battle. It's a great example, though, of watching somebody physically prompt somebody without getting emotionally involved. You can see it's exhausting for her, right? But she really is doing a great job of keeping it neutral. What we eventually realize as she, finally he does it because he wants the bubbles. He does the bubbles, and as soon as he's done the lesson, he's up and out of the chair and goes and sits underneath the dining room table to have a poo. And that's why he didn't want to sit. But at that time, he didn't have the language to say, I need to poop. And that's what happens sometimes with our kids. It's why we're constantly working on functional communication skills. But we will need to physically prompt our children sometimes, and we want to keep it gentle. We want to keep it in the right place. And that's a really lovely example. I encourage you to watch The A Word. They have their own YouTube channel, and you can find that episode. If I think of it during a break, I'll try to find which number episode it is so that you can literally see what the therapist does. In any case, that's our physical prompt, our jargon for the day. We also have for you always a question of the day. The question of the day, meant to get you thinking, get you to participate. We really love it, in particular when you answer the question on Facebook and on Twitter, because we get an opportunity on most days to talk about some of the things that you guys answer. So today's question, a little bit loaded, and I'm interested to see what you guys think. But there's been a lot in Hollywood lately, in movies and TV, and even in commercials with depicting children with autism and depicting parents of children with autism. So I want to know from you, has Hollywood done a good job depicting autism accurately? What do you think? For me, it's kind of a hit and miss. Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. There have been different things over the time. I have to say that I really love Parenthood, and scuttlebutt is that it may not be renewed, which would break my heart. And we got an opportunity to meet Max Burkholder at the Los Angeles Autism Walk. He is the young actor who plays Max on the show, and Max on the show has an Asperger diagnosis. And I think he does a really good job, and I think that the storylines depict in a very scrunched way, right? It's not accurate in terms of timeline, but we have to be accepting of the fact that they're telling a story and that they have to be able to show things in a condensed period of time. But I think that they do a really good job of depicting some of the emotions. And of course, Jason Katims, who is one of the producers on the show, is an autism parent. So I think that that's a large part of the reason why they're hitting it on the head, in my opinion. But I know you guys have had different opinions about touch, and some of you are not loving other things. So I'd love to hear from you individually about what you think of the way Hollywood has recently depicted autism, and if you feel like it's accurate. So we'll look forward to having a second to look at those later on today, I hope, because we have a lot going on today. We always have a topic of the day, and our topic this entire week is maintaining progress. We're into the summer now, officially today, where it's going to be summer, and it's a tough time for our kids and for our families because you lose services. It's very rare that somebody gains services in the summer. So it really becomes a question of how do we maintain the progress that we've made, hopefully, through the year? And not only that, how do we push forward and get new progress? As a former teacher, I can tell you that it was always an issue. We send kids out for the summer, neurotypical and otherwise, and they come back and they've had a fun summer, right? And they've had some downtime, and they're rested supposedly and have had some relaxation. But a lot of kids are further behind than they were when school got out. And you'll see that teachers end up spending that whole first month having to, having to do catch up and remedial stuff. And that's a frustrating time, I think, for a lot of teachers. But imagine, that's for kids that are typically developing, who can get back caught up and aren't that far behind. I still think it's a shame is what it is. But for our kids, it's detrimental. If our kids lose ground and have to catch up more than they already were behind, it's really, really a huge problem. We don't want to be in that position. We need to maintain progress, and not only that, push forward, gain ground, right? Start getting even more caught up. Well, we can do that, and we should do that. So we're going to be talking about things throughout the day about how we maintain progress, how we push forward to the next level. I said it before, and I say it on a frequent basis because it's heartfelt, and I hope you know that I mean that. We use Skills at home. Skills is a wonderful program that can help you to maintain that progress and push forward. And I also want you to know that they have a wonderful special right now that if you buy 1 month, you get the rest of the summer for free. So you buy 1 month and you get 2 months for free, which I got to tell you is an awesome deal. an awesome deal. It basically ends up being the cost of if you took the family to dinner and you get the lessons for the entire summer. And that's what we use at home to maintain progress and push forward in my house, me personally. So in any case, to that end, some of the things that we're going to be talking about today, we have a team building tip for you. We have the fabulous Evelyn Gould's going to be with us in the studio. She is a wonderful BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst. It's a great time if you have questions to write in or call in and let us know questions. I've got a couple of things in particular for Evelyn myself today. And there was a question that we had yesterday as Sienna Greener Wooten was leaving, and I didn't see it in time, and I apologize. But I got an answer back from Sienna to the question, and so I'm going to give Sienna's answer, and I'm also going to ask Evelyn what her take on the question is. And then, of course, at 11 o'clock, we have the wonderful Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson joining us. She co-hosts that hour with me for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We've got some current news stories to cover for you, some research to cover. We're going to have a wonderful guest. Let me get my book here. The author, one of the co-authors of Carly's Voice, and you probably have seen this. It's everywhere right now and being talked about because it's a great book. Arthur Fleischmann is going to be with us, or I think it's Fleischmann, and he's going to be talking about his journey with his daughter Carly, who was nonverbal until the age of 10. I just got goosebumps. And at the age of 10, leaned over onto a laptop computer that somebody else in the family was using and typed out the words, "Help, teeth hurt." She found her voice, and we're going to talk about what that journey was like, that emotional journey of realizing that there was a lot more going on than had previously been thought for his daughter. It's really quite an amazing emotional book. So he's going to be here with us, and we're going to talk to him, and we've got some other exciting things going on during that hour. So that's the 11 o'clock hour with Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson. I want to remind you that she is the executive director of Autism Care and Treatment Today, a wonderful nonprofit organization that gives grants to families for the things that they need and want on this journey through autism. You gotta love that. And there is a fundraiser going on right now that Act Today is the beneficiary of. Speed Gamers. This is a group of young people in Texas who, and there is their, thank you, Emily, there is where you can join them. thespeedgamers.com. They play video games. Well, you know, there's a lot of young people who play video games, and we tend to think of it as time wasted, right? Well, they don't waste their time. They're doing a week-long marathon playing Pokemon, which I don't completely get, but that's okay. I don't have to. They're raising a bunch of money. You can go onto the site and you can see exactly how they're doing it. People can donate at any time, or you can give them a challenge. You can ask them to do something in the video game, and they'll say to you, these not little, I mean, they're young people, but these young kids will say, well, we'd be happy to do that with this character, but will you pay $5 for that? I just love that. You know, what better thing? And it goes towards autism. So it's a wonderful, wonderful benefit. I hope that you'll participate. If nothing else, go and check it out. You can donate as little of amount as $1, but I think even more importantly, share it. Share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, and encourage other people to go and see what these kids are doing. I know the last time I checked in, they were just under 30,000. I haven't checked today. I'm sure that they're more than that. Their goal this week, and it goes until Friday, is to make $50,000. I know we were trying to get one of them to pull away from the gaming for a few minutes to come and be on the show with us. I don't think that they're going to be able to do that because they're busy raising money, which, you know, we're going to let them. We're not going to interrupt them too much. But if there is an opportunity for one of them to talk to us, we'll also do that today as well. But check out the Speed Gamers. We're going to take a break. When we come back, our first thing that we're going to talk about is the play tip of the week. So stick with us. Back in a few.
I am grateful for Autism Speaks because they allow families like me to have hope. They're working towards having these children live better lives.
There's a space for you. Yeah, there's a world for you, and there's a community that is behind you.
And one that has really been able to be the singular voice for people who are involved with and who care about autism.
I do have autism, but I don't let that become a disability for me. Autism Speaks is going to continue to help those who need it, and just look at all the stuff they've done so far and you will be impressed.
3, 2, 1.
And you need to support the walks. We have to raise awareness, but we also have to raise funds to do the work.
I'm grateful for Autism Speaks for one main reason, is they are allowing me to focus on the research.
The work that Autism Speaks has been doing is critical for keeping autism research on the radar screen.
We proclaimed 2 April as the World Autism Awareness Day. I'm very proud of the UN and thankful Autism Speaks.
Getting the health mandate bill passed in New Jersey particularly, we needed to be able to make an argument, not just do this because it's the right thing to do, but do it because it's cost effective.
When everyone else told me nothing was wrong with my son, I got information from a website that told me something wasn't right.
I am so proud of Autism Speaks for creating these beautiful ad campaigns, which have reached people who are not affected by autism and have also created a greater climate of compassion and understanding.
It's been really great for Bachman to have gotten involved with Autism Speaks early on. I think everybody here feels like they really make a difference.
To make sure that we generate as much money as we can for Autism Speaks so we can all solve this puzzle together.
There's no way we could have come this far without our families, without our supporters to date, but there's so much farther we have to go. And everybody's invited to join this cause. We need all the help we can get to make the difference we know we can make.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're going to have later on today the father, Arthur Fleischmann, the co-author of this book, Carly's Voice, with us during Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Really amazing book about a family and the daughter being having an autism diagnosis, also having apraxia and being nonverbal. And then at the age of 10, leaning over onto a typewriter or a laptop, that's what I'm trying to say, and typing in the words, help, teeth hurt. And now, of course, she communicates greatly on assisted devices, and it's a heartbreak for parents, right? And for a lot of us, we don't know whether our children are ever going to speak in the beginning when they're nonverbal, and it can be a devastating thing, something that is hard to accept. A lot of our kids, we can get them to the point where they are vocal, but for some kids, that's just not a reality at this moment in time, although we always want to get to functional communication skills, right? We need to be able to communicate with our children. And I just want to read you one little excerpt from the book here. A recurring dream. And this is from the dad who we're going to have on the show. I'm dreaming a dream I've had many times since Carly was born. The two of us are sitting in the kitchen, or maybe it's the den. We're talking. Carly is talking. She's teasing me about something. How do you like my haircut? I ask her. It looks like your head got caught in a food processor, she deadpans. I wake up laughing out loud. Then I roll over on my side and cry. Really important book, and we're going to be talking with Arthur Fleischmann during this show, during the 11 o'clock hour when we do Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. So I know a lot of you who are watching you either had a period of time when your child was nonverbal, or you're there right now. And sometimes that can feel like you're all the way alone. I hope that you'll tune in, especially during that hour, because it's a message of hope that they have in this book about her finding her voice. And you can visit www.carlysvoice.com to hear what Carly has to say about it as well. It's really quite amazing. In any case, it's time for the play tip of the day. No, terrible segue there, but so important on this journey through autism, whatever ability that our children, whatever skill level that they're at, that we take some time to teach quality play skills. Now, I know in the middle of it, it just seems like, why? Why is that the priority? I want my child to speak. I want my child to be able to be social. I want my child to be able to understand what's happening in their world and have functional communication skills. So why am I going to take part of precious hours that I have to work on these things and work on play skills? And there's a lot of good reasons why, but one of the first ones is that working on play skills is going to make it possible for you to work on those other things. We know if principle number one is that in order for any behavior to be maintained, it has to be reinforcing, then we have to have a bunch of things that are reinforcing to our kids. We have to have things that they enjoy. And the reality is that in the beginning for a lot of our kids, they don't enjoy play. To them, it's work, or even worse, it's just like nothing. And this, if you need help understanding that, realize that we're all different too. What I find reinforcing, you don't find reinforcing. I've said before, my husband and my son love to play Angry Birds. And to me, this is like a job. A job I don't like. It's just flat out boring. I go, why would you want to waste your time moving your finger and pulling back a bird to knock pigs off? It makes no sense to me, whatever. But Scrabble with friends, words with friends, oh yeah, sign me up. And my husband goes, really? Why would you enjoy that? So people have preferences, right? And our kids have preferences too. And we don't need to work overtime to, make somebody like something that they absolutely hate. But our children need to have a set of play skills. It's going to help them with social interaction. It's going to help them with language. And if along the way we find other things that reinforce them, woohoo, we're doing great when that happens. And I think also being able to help a child to find things that they may have previously thought were boring, and make them very enriching for them. It's a lovely thing. We all need to have some downtime and to be able to play. And I think that play gives our children a safe opportunity in which to work on many of the other skills that we're trying to get them to a fuller potential. So our tip today is about sociodramatic play. This is the kind of play when our children get to take on other characters. This is where you play house or put on the fireman costume and pretend that you're the fireman. And for a lot of our kids on the spectrum, this may be something that doesn't occur to them or that they don't necessarily find reinforcing to begin with. But it's a great skill to work on language. It's great because it involves perspective taking. If I'm going to play the fireman, then I got to think, what does a fireman do? And how does a fireman behave? And how does a fireman think? And how does a fireman feel? Now, early on, the kids aren't going to get all that, but at some point, these skills start to build. And especially, this is a great thing for socialization because there's a period of time in which this is the way kids play. And especially some kids are bossy. It's amazing to watch a group of kids play, neurotypical and otherwise, because there'll always be one kid who say, all right, this is what we're playing. We all landed in an alien ship, and you're the alien dog, and you're the alien mom, and you're the alien dad. And everybody goes, okay, and they start to play that way, and sometimes the kid will go, no, now we're on a boat and you're not an alien anymore, and things change. So we're also working on flexibility at the same time. Now, before you throw your child into that kind of a circumstance, which is a little bit of a nightmare for our children, if they don't have a lot of receptive language and people are changing things, it can be very upsetting. So before we send them and expect great things to happen when they're playing with other kids, we want to work on these things with them. And we can do this with mom and dad. We can do this with therapists. You can have an older child who is keyed into what's happening come over. But if you've got costumes from previous Halloween or from any time that your child has dressed up as anything or other children have dressed up as anything, it becomes an ideal situation. We did a couple of play dates a couple of years ago that I just remember so fondly. They were so much fun that over the years we had amassed a couple of Halloween costumes, and a friend of my son's who is also on the spectrum, but totally different how they both present, but both doing really well, also had a bag of costumes, and we got together, and those kids had so much fun trying on the different costumes and then interacting together in the different costumes. So one of them would be a stormtrooper and one of them would be Batman, and they would have this whole thing that they would do as the stormtrooper and the Batman. And let me just tell you, they had so much fun putting on the characters. We brought out a mirror for them to look in, so that they could see. We made a big deal, took pictures of it so that they could see themselves, and they were posing and then interacting with each other. Two little boys with autism who were just having a ball and really communicating with each other and saying, you stand over here and let's do this, and okay, now we'll do this. Very, very exciting. Now, it doesn't have to just be about the costumes, but sometimes that can be a fun way to get them excited about it. But giving kids the opportunity, whether you've got a play kitchen or you're making the play kitchen, taking a couple of pots and pans and a couple of dishes that aren't breakable down and saying, okay, this is the stove. We're working on imaginative play, right? And then assigning roles to people. Let the child, if the child can, say, you know, I'm going to be the mom, or I'm going to be the dad, or I'm going to be the baby, or I'm going to be the dog. Even recently, we had my 4-year-old niece visiting us, and she's very verbal, and it was all about, she was saying to my son, okay, she has 5 dogs at home, and so she was missing her dogs and said to my son, okay, you be the dog. And so my son walked around, you know, and pretended he was the dog. It was great for both of them, and then they would switch roles and do all these different things. Really great imaginative skills for children, but they're also taking on other persona. And when they do that, there's a measure of perspective taking. They're being social, they're using language. It's a really great thing to do. If you don't have costumes, ask around. Ask other people in the neighborhood, say, does anybody have some costumes? Or look on eBay or Craigslist, or sometimes the Goodwill or Salvation Army. And just even if you have 1 or 2, and again, you don't have to do it with costumes. You can set up a circumstance, but a really fun thing to work on with our kids. And when you've got summer, you've got a little bit more time, and ask them, you know, give them choices. If they are not particularly great at picking things or coming up with ideas, you can say, okay, we can either play that we're in a castle, or we can play that we're on the moon. Which one do you want to play? You can show them pictures of we're in the castle or we're on the moon, and the child can point to one. But you will see that over time, this skill will grow, and it will be something that serves them well, especially in those first few years of elementary school. Boy, even now, my son is going into 4th grade, they let them loose on the playground, and they want to play these scenarios. And being able to be a part of that really services the child well. So, play tip for the week. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we have our team building tip for the week. So stick with us. Welcome. We're here with Cecilia Knight. She is the Director of Training for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, so it's a rare treat to have her here. And right now I want to talk about self-stimulatory behavior.
Well, I guess textbook, we're looking at any ritualistic or stereotypical behavior that a child engages in repetitively. The thought is the more appropriate replacement behaviors that we teach, the more those items become more reinforcing and give the child access to whether it's visual stimulation or auditory stimulation or tactile stimulation. So those now more appropriate activities would be more reinforcing. So it's important to teach something that competes and that is more fun than engaging in the self-stimulatory behavior. All self-stimulatory behavior is automatically reinforced, meaning the behavior itself feels good for whatever reason. I have no visual stimulation, so I flap my hand in front of my eye and now I have visual stimulation. So you're looking for a replacement that matches. I had a little girl one time who was not talking but was singing, and it was very repetitive and the same song over and over. Music became a big interest. So when we gave her a voice to have a conversation, the vocal stereotypy decreased dramatically.
There's a tummy. Oh, you want lip gloss too?
Do you find that sometimes parents are hesitant or resistant to replacing a self-stimulatory behavior?
Yes. It's very difficult to always be looking out for that self-stimulatory behavior. I do think you have to help a parent understand that those things like riding the scooter will eventually replace the self-stimulatory behavior.
A lot of us have been there. That's not where we want to be. It just felt like, wow, I'm going to take away the thing that makes him feel okay, and he's working so hard and doing this.
But also know that that's the point of intervention, is not to take away all the things that are reinforcing to the child, but to give them other options that are more appropriate. It's difficult to engage with your child many times in a self-stimulatory behavior because there's a pattern or routine, and it's hard to engage with them. So trying to bring them into activities that are reinforcing with others.
Where did they go? Oh, nice job. He needs a nose too. Where does his nose go? What else? What else does he need? This is my potato.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It is the time of day, the time of week when we talk about building a team. We've been talking about this a lot this week, that the idea that in order to really be successful teaching your child and having them reach their fullest potential using the principles of ABA, you really need a team. Now, what size team? I think that depends on you and your child and how many hours you have to devote, how many hours you have funded. But we know that generalization is something that we got to strive for from the beginning. This is the idea that we're going to teach things to a child, but we're going to teach it in a way so that at some point they're going to be able to make the leap, and we're not going to have to teach every single instance of this particular thing, right? And that the child begins to be able to apply what they've learned in new and novel situations. That's really what we want. It's when the skill becomes their own and they can use it no matter whether it's at home or it's at the classroom, whether it's the teacher saying it or mom saying it. It's their skill. They can do it. And in order for us to really be effective, we have to be switching things up a little bit. And there are lots of different ways that we do this, but one of the ways in which we do this is not having the same person work with a child over and over and over again, that it's got to be at least two people so that we're getting in that window working towards generalization. I think even better to be at least three, but at least two, so that the child isn't just learning it from one person. We don't want to create the circumstance in which the child can perform these skills, but only when one person says it and only when it's done in a certain way, right? That's not really learning the skill. That's learning something by rote, and we don't want that. So we got to build a team. at some point, we need a team. Now, it may be that you have an ABA provider that gives you a team, that they've already hired everybody and they say, here's your team. This person is going to arrive at this time. This person is going to arrive at that time. There's your team. Okay, well, there are great benefits to that. That's what I had. And I have to say that it's a lot less stressful. You don't have as much control, I'll be honest with you, but that's one place where I was happy to give up control, and I'm a control freak. For some of you, you're going to be amassing your team yourself. And it might just be that you're training one other person besides yourself, and that's fine. But you're going to be building a team, and there are a couple of things that we have learned over the years from people who've been doing this that we can do to ensure that we're more likely to have success. And we try to do that for our children, so why wouldn't we try to do that for ourselves, right? So from time to time, at least once a week, we try to give you a team building tip. And today I wanted to talk about, because we had Sienna Greener-Wooten in yesterday talking about in the beginning and how we start ABA, and we briefly touched on the whole thing of figuring out where in the house you do ABA. And I'm a real big fan of setting the stage for success. That environment, we know, literally has a lot to do with how we perform, right? If I am trying to learn calculus in the middle of a busy mall, I am less likely for my learning style to be as successful as if I was in a very quiet room where I could concentrate. So we got to find the place in the house or in the condo or in the apartment that we think is going to be the most conducive, not only for our child, but also for the team. And you got to think about that a little bit. You really do, because if you or someone else or a whole lot of someone else's, are going to be working at your absolute best level with a child for hours on end, it has to be conducive. So if you've devoted a little tiny room where there really isn't enough room for your child to sit down and somebody else to sit down, I think you're going to be in the neighborhood of having issues earlier as opposed to later. For these people, principle number one, in order for any behavior to be maintained, it has to be reinforcing. So for your team to want to keep on working on the things that they're working on and doing it at the highest level, there has to be some level of reinforcement, and we certainly don't want it to be aversive, right? So setting that stage, finding the place in your house that is going to have potential to at least be quiet when you need it to be quiet, that's not going to be in a traffic pattern where there's constantly going to be interruptions. If there's occasional interruption, I think everybody understands that. But if it's the place where everybody's constantly tromping through, it's going to be really, really difficult. A place where you have access to things, to stimuli, but that it's not constant, it doesn't have a huge glass window that cannot be covered, that there are constantly people walking by that are going to be an interruption. A place that can be quiet, but that you have access to the toys that you need to be able to access, and the vast majority of the things that you have to be able to access. I've told the story before about how we had 2 boxes. Well, actually, there were a bunch of binders that we had and one big file box that had to be portable, because every 2 weeks we would come to clinic and all the files had to come with us to clinic. And we, in our particular condo, our decision with our family was that we were going to give up the dining room. We had this very long, it was a dining room and living room attached to each other, and that's what we were going to give up, was the dining room, because I thought it was just going to stay in the dining room. Denial. And we took the kitchen counter, so it went from the kitchen to the dining room, no walls, right? And we took the kitchen counter and we put the books up there and we put the file box up there and said, this is how we're going to make this work. We took our dining room table out, put a therapy table that could be lowered with the little therapy, the school chair, and we had bins that had the toys in it, and said, this is how we're going to make this work. Which, looking back, I don't know what other decision that we could have made in that moment, but in that moment, I can tell you that I thought it was the temporary fix, that this was just going to be a temporary thing. Well, it ended up being 3 years in that room. Okay, there was nothing temporary about it. And while I think it was a great choice for my child, it wasn't necessarily the best choice for our therapist, and it wasn't necessarily the best choice for my husband and I, because what it meant was when I had to give them space to do the therapy, I had to go into the other room. I could not do any laundry. I could not do any dishes. I could not go to the front door. I hooked up a phone in the other room, but I was really in isolation, which ended up being a not necessarily good thing. So I encourage you, and it also meant that any time that I had to do something, if I had to get a drink of water, I had to go out and interrupt. And I think, I think our therapist did fairly well with it. But Sienna was talking yesterday about how the therapists are there and present in your home. And I think because of the way the house was set up and the way we set it up for therapy, they heard much more of my relationship with my husband in terms of, we had no place to go if something had to be talked about and somebody was leaving, if my husband was going to work. And, there were often conversations at the door about, all right, well, this is what we have to do and this is what we have to do. And they got to hear a lot of the private aspects of our life, which looking back probably wasn't their most favorite thing. I mean, who wants to eavesdrop on somebody else's life? But we all got through it. But as you're thinking about it, think about, okay, all right, do the perspective taking on it. I'm setting up the room here. I'm imagining that I'm the child who has sensory issues. How is this for me? Okay, it's doable. Now, I'm a stranger coming into this house and I'm sitting here and here's what I have access to and I have to do this. How is this for me? And then thinking for yourself, okay, I'm here and what is this going to mean for me and what is it going to mean for everybody else in the house? Taking that perspective on and setting the stage. There's no perfect answer. But doing the best that you can to set the stage for success. Having your supplies in a place where the therapist and the team and you can access them. That was one thing that we did do well, that we had a bin that had all of there are supplies you need, things like pens and pencils and a timer, and you need index cards and holds paper, 3-hold paper with lines on it. There are things that you need to have in supplies. You don't want to waste time every day looking for where is my stuff to teach. If you do that, it's just time that's gone forever. Have it in a place and have everything however it works for you, but know where it is, so that if somebody says, okay, do you have the timer, that you know right where it is and that you don't have to go hunting for it every single day. Really going to be important. And being organized enough. The books are important. If you're doing this at home, so important that you set up a logbook that has the sheets in it, that you know where your child's lessons are. You go to that and you know where it is, and the data sheets are there so that you're tracking everything. It's not a mystery of, oh, okay, well, it's time for us to teach and I have no idea where my materials are. Save yourself the time and the stress of that. Set it up for yourself in a way that it's going to work, and you'll find that not only will you be a better team member, the team will function better and you will have less stress, and all of that equals your child getting progress faster. And when we talk about being efficient and effective, boy, isn't that the thing. Okay, it is time for the A word. This is the lovely documentary that's being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, following a little boy who was diagnosed with autism at 2. He's about to turn 3 at where we are in the series. He's just had a new baby sister who we haven't actually seen yet on the series, but Jack Riley on this particular week is having a new therapist come, and she's doing what we call an overlap with a senior therapist, where she gets an opportunity to be with a child and work with a child with somebody else there. So there's a little bit of a give and take. They're taking turns, and the other therapist, the older therapist, the senior therapist, is helping the new therapist to know how things work with Jack Riley in particular, and reminding her, because she's had her training, but it's so different when you're reading about it and then when you go to do it, because there's things to hold in your hand and things to move and you go, right? We all do. So take a look, because this is a great way of initiating a new therapist. This is the A word.
crabby feet there. Are you excited? Wow.
Can I have a kiss? Thank you. He did tell Miss Miriam yesterday that he said poopies. She came and got me. We looked, there was none there, so we thought he was telling us stories. And 2 minutes later, there were.
Oh.
Wow.
You did it, didn't you?
That's exciting.
She's always a new therapist and is having an overlap with Jessica. She will be doing fieldwork training until she is ready to independently work with a child. In order for She's Away to work independently, she must first pass a theory-based test, which is her knowledge of autism, and then second, she must pass a field evaluation, which is an overlap where she applies what she has learned.
If I want to do actions, then it looks like we're just doing maintenance right now.
Do the ones that he already has mastered.
And that's in a separate bag. Okay.
Yeah. And then you would just be asking, well, what is the little boy doing? The boy is playing.
Okay.
It should be his answer.
Okay.
Jack Riley, my name is She's Away.
Hi, She's Away.
Hi, she's away.
Oh, very good. Give me a high five. Yeah. Okay, so Jack, what would you like to do after we do a program? Would you like bubbles?
Puzzle.
Oh, puzzle? Okay, we can do puzzle.
Since we're using the puzzle as a reinforcer, don't give it to him yet
right.
until you do the program. Because now he's like, well, I already got the puzzle,
yeah,
so
why should I?
Why should
Okay.
I work?
What is the boy doing?
He's sitting.
Yeah! Oh, good! One sticker. What is this man doing?
Prostitute.
Yeah! What is she doing?
She's kicking.
Yeah!
Hey, good job.
What is he doing?
He's Spider positive.
Yeah, that was great.
So bring us some other ones too.
Spider.
What are they doing?
She's hugging.
Yes, they're hugging.
Are you taking data as you're going along?
Yeah.
Okay.
What is he doing?
He's sweeping.
Oh, yeah, you're so good.
He's sweeping.
So make sure you write the
The
stimuli,
stimuli,
too.
yeah.
It's like, I don't want to take too much time. And should I just be quick with it?
Yeah.
Okay.
What are they doing?
He's playing.
Yeah, they're playing. Good job, Jack.
Playing a box.
They are playing blocks. You're so smart.
What is he doing?
He's playing.
Yeah, another
He's
one.
playing blocks.
He's playing blocks too.
He's playing a car.
He's playing cars. That's right.
What is she doing?
He's playing.
Yeah. What are they doing?
He's playing.
Yeah, you finished. Good job, Jack Riley. Give me high fives. Can you do high fives? Yes. Okay. You ready to play with your puzzle? Okay, here.
Where's the cow? Where's the cow? Oh, good job. What does he say? What does the cow say? What is he? Moo. Hi, monkey. You want a pillow sandwich? Okay, go get me the pillows. Will you show She's Away how we do your pillow sandwich?
I want to see this pillow sandwich.
Okay, ready? One. Hold on. Can you let go? Hold on. 1, 2, 3. Ah! Squash! Pillow sandwich. It's a pillow sandwich. And here we get there's a lot of opportunities for him to ask for things. Like if he wants more of jumping, more of pillow sandwiches. It's called man training.
Oh.
So what we're doing is we're giving him frames because he knows that I want and give me, but we're trying to teach him a new frame, which is can I have something. So how we prompt him is something that he really, really wants, like pillow sandwiches or having you pick him up or something.
Okay.
And I've been prompting him with a partial verbal with just the cup, and he knows to say, "Can I?" So, I mean, we could track that later, but this is just one of the opportunities that you can use to to do that program. Do you want more? And you say, "Can I?" Yes, you can have pillow sandwich. Come here. Crash! Ask her, say, "Can?"
Okay, come here. Let me see you. Oh, how fun is that?
Welcome back to Autism Live. We were just sitting here watching that luscious little boy. It's so much fun to watch him. I really love that series. And if you watch the show at all, you know I'm all about the A word. You can be watching the entire series on their own YouTube channel. I am going to find that I was talking earlier about one of the different scenes in it where our phrase of the day today was physical prompt, and the difference between physically prompting and manhandling, and that there's a great example of Jessica dealing with a child who's not being compliant and physically prompt him and it not turning into, manhandling. But I swear children sprout octopi arms.
Oh yeah, they do.
They just like, ah!
Yeah. And they do like crazy, like thing roll back and like.
Yeah. And getting and motoring them through something when they're doing that. It is hard.
That's why, we often will try and avoid the physical prompts if we can and find other ways, just because it can be, once the kids get to a certain size, it's just difficult to maintain that line between manhandling and physical prompting, and you don't want to risk harming the child.
Yeah.
Just because even, just grabbing someone the wrong way on their wrist can do damage, so you have to be so careful.
Interesting. I'm glad I brought that up because I wouldn't know that. I should introduce you. If you are new to the show, this is Evelyn Gould, and she is a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst, and she joins us on Wednesdays at 10 a.m., and we love that because she's a wealth of information. If you have questions, you can be writing into us now. If you're watching live, you can be doing it on autism-live.com. If you are watching us in any other form on any other site, and you can be emailing us in. We appreciate that, and even if it's after the fact, because Evelyn comes in every Wednesday, we can always catch up on questions the next week with Evelyn, or even in between. We had Sienna Greener-Wooten in yesterday, and we were talking about different things when you're starting therapy, expectations, what that's like, and she left, and right after she walked out the door to go to a meeting, somebody posed a question, and the question was, because she mentioned that a parent's interaction is always going to be different with the child than anyone else's. And so the person said, I heard you discuss that a parent's interaction with his or her child will be different from any other person. Do you think a parent, especially mom, can be an efficient therapist just like any other therapist on the child's team? And so I emailed that to Sienna, and she responded back and said, that's a hard one. I think a parent can learn to be an efficient therapist, just like most people, given the right training, can learn to be an efficient therapist. But the difficulty comes from how your child will interact with you playing the role of therapist instead of being a mom. If you have the luxury of having others be the therapist so that you can just be mom, then that would be my recommendation. If having mom do therapy is the only option, then it is doable, but it's tricky to play both roles. What would you say to that? Do you think, I had said yesterday that what's hard is that, we always have baggage as moms.
Yeah.
With our kids. We just do, and that we have to overcome that, but we can. It just takes longer, I think.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I completely agree with what Sienna's saying and with what you're saying as well. And for sure, you can train parents to work with to implement, early intervention programs with the kids or behavior management strategies and so on. You can absolutely do that. But the problems come because you're asking a parent then to take on the role of therapist as well as a parent. And I think generally parents just want to be parents. It's very hard to be a therapist because you're having to leave the parent baggage behind.
Yeah.
You've got to leave that role behind, and that's very challenging.
Yeah, there are some days that I can do that, but there are a lot of days that I can't. And actually one of the things that I want to talk about with you later is all of us dropping our baggage and how we help our kids to drop their baggage too. But
it's very difficult because a lot of the stuff that we maybe would ask you to do might feel counterintuitive to being a parent.
Yes.
I think. And so you're having to overcome thoughts and feelings about, like I actually even had a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday who's having trouble with her child is addicted, for want of a better word, to dummies. You don't call them dummies.
Lollipops? Pacifiers. Okay.
Pacifiers. And she was like, I don't know what to do. She's asked me a couple of times before, like, how do I get her to give up these pacifiers? And so I was kind of talking her through what I would recommend, but I just kept saying to her, this is really hard. This is going to be really hard because you're going to feel like I'm being terrible to my child, because she's going to be upset because she can't have them, and then she's going to up the ante because she's going to try and make you give them to her. And this is a very smart child who's very good at saying that, but mommy, I love you, and all that kind of stuff. And so what I was asking her to do without support would be very, very challenging, because it's going against her feelings as a parent in that moment. In the long run, I kept saying, you know, in the long run, you're being a really good parent, because you're setting boundaries, and you're showing your child that they need to listen to you, and that what you say, and all these types of things that are really good in the long run. But in that moment, when your child is like pleading with you, or crying, or upset, or not being successful, or whatever, that's very, very difficult to overcome that and know that you're being the therapist and you're doing the right thing.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because my last interaction with my son last night, because it's summer and he doesn't want to go to bed, and it's really hard, and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, that, you know, it's light so much later, and, you know, they don't absolutely have to go to bed, and, you know, but I'm trying to hold the line so that we're not getting to bed at 11:30, and he's Mr. Excuse, and he's realized what works is by saying, but Mommy, I want to be with you, and Mommy, can we cuddle? And he had like all the different lead-ups and had all kinds of time with me, and he was in bed, and I took a shower and got out of the shower, and I was going to bed, and I thought that he was long asleep, and from his bedroom I hear, Mommy, could you cuddle with me? And of course, in that moment I was like, well, he asked appropriately, right? And plucking at my heartstrings. But I thought to myself, you know, if I do this, this is going to be every single night, and it's going to end up being midnight, and I really can't do this. It's not good for him. It's not good for me. And I said to him, you know what? Mommy loves you, and we had plenty of time to cuddle earlier. We'll cuddle tomorrow, but this is your alone time, and this is Mommy's alone time. And I felt like a criminal.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly.
Like a criminal. And this morning I felt horrible leaving. He wasn't awake when I left, and I still feel like a criminal. I can't wait to see him this afternoon and hug him. It just was terrible. But I did the right thing.
Yeah, you did the right thing.
Okay, but I feel like a criminal.
I know, right now you do, but in the long run, later on, that'll fade away, and you'll be pleased that you did it, because in the long run you'll have a better outcome. You know.
Well, I'll have sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
And he'll have sleep, which
and
seems
everyone's
important.
quality of life will be better.
Yeah, it's hard. Although, because you know, the other thing that's really hard is that I know that he's at that age where really soon he's going to say, you know, don't hug me, don't touch me, don't, you know, I'm Mr. Independent, and I'm going to think back to these moments and go, I turned down a cuddle? What was I thinking? So I don't know.
But then you've also got to think about the things that you are teaching him, like independence, or being able to, you know, be on his own and sleep on his own, and that you set boundaries. So you forget that builds trust, like saying no to your child and meaning what you say, and not giving in, and setting, you know, keeping them safe, and all the rest of it. Like, those things are really important for building a good relationship. They're not just like negative impact kind of things. They're like building trust and feeling safe.
Even when you say, no, I'm not going to give in to you, it builds trust. That's a really good thing for me to hear today.
Yes, and then, you know, because sometimes when if you're not able to say no to your child, and you don't set the boundaries, it can feel quite chaotic for kids, and they don't necessarily feel contained and safe and supported.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, I do want to talk with you some more about when kids get stuck on something. And I don't mean like not progressing.
Can I just stop you for a second?
Sure, absolutely.
I just wanted to make one last comment about this question.
Yes.
About the parent being the therapist. The other problem is on the other end, is that the child has a history with you as a parent. And that can be quite difficult to overcome when you suddenly switch your role into therapist. Because the child is like, you're my mom, and you do this, and you do that, and you don't do that, and that can be really hard to overcome, because you have that long history. So you can struggle to kind of implement certain things, or it can be harder for you than for a therapist who comes in and has no history, and can just enforce rules, or you know, just interact with the child, and the child doesn't have any assumptions or expectations.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about with the baggage.
Exactly.
That, you know, hard to overcome. But we should note that a lot of people have been able to overcome it.
Yes, and so you can do it if you need good training, definitely, and if you have someone supporting you, that's the best way. And I've seen parents be very good therapists, so we're not saying that parents can't be very good therapists. They really can, and you can do it if you don't have, but like Sienna said, if you have the option of having other people come in and do it, and then you kind of take over once the child has kind of established the skills or whatever, and they can train you, then I would go with that option.
Absolutely.
And you just concentrate on being a mom.
But no matter what, we have to uphold what happens, even if we have other people coming in, we have to uphold.
So you're going to have to be involved at some point, like, because your child's environment is basically you and your house. So you need to be involved if you're going to really see your kid bring in these wonderful skills that they're learning to their everyday life and so on. You have to get involved.
Absolutely. I always say I never want to be the weakest person on the team as the parent. I don't pretend that I'm going to be the rock star on the team, but I don't want to be the weakest link on the team.
Exactly. I mean, I've said a lot in my time working with kids, is like, I can get your kid to do whatever I want them to do, but that's not very helpful to them because I'm not part of their everyday life.
Right.
We need to get them doing whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Which sounds crazy good.
Yeah.
Always. And so we're going to take a break. We're going to come back and talk a little bit though about when kids get stuck. And sometimes they'll get stuck on a phrase or they get stuck on a thing. And I'm not talking about on a lesson, like just something that gets stuck in their craw and they can't seem to get off of it. And what we can do when that happens. So I'm really interested to hear what you have to say. So stick with us. We'll be back in just a few minutes with Evelyn Gould, BCBA.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provides you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community, where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. Our special guest right now is Evelyn Gould, BCBA. Want to let you know that if you're watching us on Autism Live and it says live across the top, you really can ask questions right now. I had that function turned off for some reason. I don't know how it got turned off, but it is on now, so you can ask questions. The Your Question box is live and active. You can also be emailing in or calling in or Skyping in your questions. I was saying before the break that I wanted to talk to Evelyn in particular about what to do when our kids get stuck. And there are a couple of different examples I want to give. And on my local parent chat group, somebody was talking about this too, that sometimes kids get stuck asking questions. And they'll ask the same question over and over and over again until as a parent you literally think you're losing your mind. And for my son, sometimes it's a question, but a lot of times it's I'm hungry, that he'll say to me, I'm hungry. And I say, okay, I'm cooking dinner, or okay, we're in the car, we're on our way home, and then I'll cook dinner, whatever, and there'll be like a 5-second lag, and he'll say, I'm hungry. And over the years, I've come to understand that that's his way of saying, I'm uncomfortable, and I'm still uncomfortable, and I am still uncomfortable, and you haven't done anything to change it. But what would you recommend when a child just keeps asking the same question or keeps saying the same thing? What's the really proper thing for us as parents to do other than wait until you get so frustrated saying, don't ask that again?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, to be really effective in knowing what to do is to look at why your kid's doing it. So, you know, we always talk about finding the function. So thinking about why is my kid doing it? And there's several different reasons why your kid might be getting stuck on a particular question or a phrase. And one of those reasons could be for attention. Could be that, you know, they know that they're getting your attention. Every time they ask a question, you're going to respond to them in some way. So it could be that. And remember that attention can be like negative as well. Like it could be like something that you think is really aversive, like shouting at your kid going, just stop asking me questions all the time. But that's still attention. So it could be that. It could be that your child's trying to escape from something, like some anxiety, for example, like anxiety or feeling uncomfortable, like your kid. And that's quite common. I mean, even I do it myself. I perseverate on some things sometimes when I'm feeling stressed or when I'm anxious and I want to like reassurance. So it could be that your kid's asking you because they're worrying about something. It could be that something related to what they're saying. So like maybe they're saying, when are we leaving? When are we leaving? Because they have some anxieties about when it's going to happen, or when this transition to wherever it is going to happen, or maybe they have anxieties about where you're going or that kind of thing. But it could be that they're anxious about something that's unrelated to what they're saying.
Yeah, which is always difficult to figure out.
Right. But it's making them feel better in some way.
Right.
And another thing that they could be doing, it could be that it makes them feel good, and you know, just hearing the same words over and over again, like an echolalia, we call it, and they're just repeating the same thing over and over, and it just in their ears, it just sounds good to them and it makes them feel good.
Right.
So it's kind of like a stereotypical behavior in a way.
It's comforting in some way to them to say it again and again.
Right. It's just like we see our kids engaging in other kind of repetitive behaviors. It's just another version of that. It has the same function. It makes them feel good in some way. So those are a variety of different reasons why
and
your
would
kid
all
might
have
be
different ways that you would attack it.
Yeah, I mean, generally, what you then want to think about is, well, I don't want to reinforce it. If it's something that you can have control over, you don't have a lot of control over how it feels inside. So if your kid is doing it for a reason, internal reason, where it just feels good to them, that's hard to. You can't get inside your kid and kind of not reinforce it. If you see what I'm saying. But if you think it might be attention, or they're trying to escape something. That's stressing them out or something like that, or even like it could be that they think they're going to avoid doing something by bothering you. Then you do have more control over that.
Okay.
So, I mean, the first thing I would suggest, regardless, is that you don't don't participate in the game, so to speak.
Right.
So when your kid is repeatedly asking a question, you don't keep giving them the answer. That you maybe think about, like, maybe twice, it's okay. I have them ask you what time's dinner, and you say 5 o'clock, and then they ask you again what time's dinner, and you say 5 o'clock, and say it's 5 o'clock, we're done with this conversation kind of thing. And then no matter whether they ask you again, then you just have to ignore it.
Yeah.
And then if your kid's like trying to escape something uncomfortable, then it's about figuring out how you can either address what is they're trying to escape.
Can I go back one second to the last thing you said about ignoring it? So one of the things that I've been doing is that when he asks again and again, and I have stopped saying, I think around the third, so maybe I need to cut it at the second, but one of the things that I say to him is, I think after the second time what I say to him is I say, well, that's a problem, what do you think we should do about it? And then if he keeps asking what I say to him, I make him look at me and I say, asked and answered. But that's not ignoring it, and I should just ignore it?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing to think about is, you see, it really, really depends on what your kid's asking or what it is that they're talking about. But like if your kid's saying something to you and you're trying to get dinner ready and everything, then trying to redirect them to something else, or like you're saying, like problem solving, or just trying to get them engaged in doing something else other than pestering you. Something else occurred to me there, but it's just completely gone out of my head. It'll come back to me at some point.
Yeah, that's right. But no, that's true, because I have tried to distract him, and when he asks the question, instead of answering the question, ask him a question about, do you know where, your bionicle that's red is?
Ignoring it and redirecting the conversation to something else. So, I mean, that is definitely one way. Like, if you're talking about something else and you can't also talk about that thing, it's like the incompatible behavior kind of thing. So definitely that's one strategy. Having your kid like then go off and do something else, like direct them to go and find something else to busy themselves. You might want to think about some kinds of visual support. Sometimes that can be helpful. Like if you've got a kid who's anxious about something that's about to happen, and they're repeatedly asking you questions, then having something concrete that they can see that visually depicts what's going to happen or when it's going to happen. Like that could be like giving them a little picture. I've done stuff with kids where I've given them like a little picture to hold until until dinner's ready, and then I take it off them or whatever, or a little clock, a timer or something, just something that's more tangible to them than words. That can really decrease kind of stress.
And I think it kind of interrupts the pattern too, because sometimes it feels like there's a record playing. You can tell how old I am by my reference, but there's a record playing and they just get stuck in a groove, and you gotta somehow do something to get the, you bump the record player so it goes and goes on to something else. So giving them something to hold, I think, interrupts the pattern. That's a great idea, Evelyn. And then you had started to talk about when it's escape, when they're feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah. So one of the ways, like that's another thing. If you give them something tangible or some kind of visual or something that helps them, if they're trying to escape anxiety, that can decrease anxiety. Maybe giving them choices as well. So like saying, rather than engaging in the question answering, like you said, you could say, I'm hungry. It's like, okay, well, do you want to eat a snack now and then want dinner later, or like, I don't know, some kind of choice over the situation that they're anxious about can help them feel like can help kids feel like they have a bit of control over the situation. So I mean, and it can be any small thing, even a small decision, even a small choice that kind of isn't really a choice, but as long as you phrase it like it is a choice, it can make people feel like less like they're out of control. It can feel like they have some kind of something, they have something to do with what's happening.
You're totally reminding me that when we've gone through this before, I had taken this one basket and filled filled it with things that were appropriate to have that wouldn't spoil a dinner. And I put that on the kitchen counter and said to my son, this is your basket. You get to take one thing at your discretion, so you get to choose when you have it, and you don't have to ask, but just once a day. And we had that, and then we had a bunch of house guests come, and I moved it off the counter. But it was actually working, so that he didn't have to come to me. He was the captain of his own destiny and could take something.
It's giving him some control.
Yeah. Okay. I did something and I forgot about it. So you just reminded me I need to reinstitute the basket. And it had like little cuties in it and really tiny little granola bar things that, nothing that would destroy a meal. Okay, so, but now, unless you have more to add to that, I want to take it one step further. For the kids who perseverate on something, whether it's an injustice that happened to them at school this morning, or something that mom said or dad did, or an object, when somebody gets stuck in that groove and it's not a question, is it the same kinds of things that we do? What can we do to bump that record player and get them off of that? My kid has been stuck on something for a couple of days, and he's about to drive me batty.
Well, again, I think you need to look at the function before you know exactly what it is, or you can figure out exactly what's going to work. Like, is your kid fixated on something because it really, it's bringing up a lot of anxiety, or is your kid fixating on it and again, it feels good to them internally, let's just obsessing over something. Are they trying to get control over something? Just thinking about why is my kid engaging in this?
Okay. I'm so bad at finding the function of things. This is why I have to be surrounded by
well,
PCBAs.
It's very hard. It can be
difficult.
difficult. It can be really difficult to figure out those kind of complex. Like if your kid's fixating on a specific incident or something, it can be hard to figure out what the function is or why they're perseverating on it. But you've always remember that it's either they're trying to avoid something, and that could be a physical kind of situation or something, but it can also just be trying to avoid feelings that are uncomfortable, or emotions or thoughts that are uncomfortable. So they're always trying to avoid something or trying to get something generally, or it feels good, it just feels good to them inside. So it's probably going to be one of those three things, and then it's just about trying to figure out maybe what it is they're trying to avoid or what it is they're trying to get from it.
I think it's probably access to a tangible. I think it's something that he wants, and I think that it's this roundabout passive aggressive way of wearing me down to the point where I'm going to go, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever, just do it. He was crabby the other day, and I thought it was so brilliant that I finally said to him, hey, what's going on with you? What is going on with you? And he said, well, I'm just, really unhappy and da-da-da-da-da. And I said, okay, well, what's the deal? And he said, I have all these complaints. And I said, well, then let's get them. Let's air them out. Let's air them out. And he said, okay. And he said, I have 100 of them. I said, well, let's take the first 25. Let's tick them off and see. And it was really a great conversation to have with my child, because he said, you interrupt me. And I don't like it when you interrupt me. And I said, all right, fair enough. I do interrupt you. I will try to be better. But as he was listing off these things, I said to him, but you realize that we've been working on him waiting appropriately because all of a sudden he's interrupting all the time. And I said, you realize you're interrupting me too. That's one of the top things we've been working on. So why don't we work on it together? We'll try to be more aware. I'll be more aware and you'll be more aware. And because I don't like it when you interrupt me either. Oh, okay, great. Then we move on to the next thing. He's like, and he listed off all these things that were very reasonable that I said, and usually they were things that I'd been trying to get him to do. And I was like, very, eye-opening. Oh, well, I'm doing this to him, and it makes me crabby. Okay, well, I'll try to be better. I thought, wow, patting myself on the back. This is so great that we had this conversation. And I said to him, what have we learned from this conversation? That if you have complaints, you should tell mommy what they are, and we'll work on them together, and we'll try to be better, and bring up your complaints whenever you want. But it's like everything that anybody ever said all of a sudden now. That he had to pick up his Legos the other day to go to dinner or to go to bed, and this has been a rule forever. If you play with the Legos on the carpet, then you have to pick up the Legos and put them back in the basket. And he's like, well, you said that I could play with them on the couch. When did I say that? A week ago.
Yeah, I think it is exciting because I think that that's a sign of a certain developmental milestone, because I think typical kids at some point get into that. All typical kids go through a phase of being like, well, you said this, like when last week you said, and you're thinking, I don't even remember that.
I don't.
But like I know a lot of kids, typical kids of my friends and stuff.
So are you telling me that my child has the typicals?
So I mean, I don't know, because I don't obviously know why he's engaging in that behavior or whatever. But it from hearing it right now, it sounds quite normal. Like it sounds like it could be just a phase of development that he's going through, where he's like, oh, I've found this voice, and the justice kind of thing comes out, like the realizing what's fair and what's not fair. And that kind of thing seems like a kind of normal phase to go through.
And I think there's probably an element of escape, because as long as he's doing that, and it seems to crop up at bedtime.
Yes.
Are we seeing a running theme here?
Yes.
So that he's escaping a little bit and getting a little bit more time to play with the things as we're having the discussion, as he's pushing me towards the edge
he's getting
of
interaction with you that he maybe wouldn't normally get at that time. Like he's getting you to sit down and talk about stuff with him. He's getting to talk to you and voice his concerns, and you're interacting with him and listening to him. So it's really intense attention he's getting.
And it got really intense. It was not last night, but the night before, that I said, well, I'm done with this discussion. We're not talking about it anymore tonight. You know, we have office hours and we can talk about this. But I might have said it louder than that. It was not my finest moment. I was like, I'm done talking about this. And he knew I was done too. And then he stopped and went off to bed. But so I'll try to say that in a better tone.
And remember that as well. If you see yourself in a pattern of you just keep going, and then you're just like, I'm done. And then he's like, oh, she's done. It's like he's, so just being aware of that, being like, well, it works for him, because you do keep going and keep going and keep going past your point of feeling comfortable with keep going, and until you just can't take it anymore. So maybe like stopping before you get to that point. Maybe set the boundary before you start. Like maybe say, okay, we have this much time.
Right.
And that's all we're going to talk. We're only going to talk about it. Then you could even have a visual, like some kids, you can have a clock or something, be like, okay, this is the amount of time that we have, and when the hand gets to here, then we can't talk about it anymore.
Then it's all over, and you can't talk about it.
I mean, I actually have done stuff like that with myself.
Really?
Where I'm like, okay, I'm going to allow myself to perseverate on this for 10 minutes, and then I'm not allowed to perseverate on it. I can sit and write and talk about it, or I'm gonna, after this week, I'm just not going to talk about this anymore. It's that kind of thing. Like, and it does actually really help you. I think you also use that time better. More productively than whenever it's just a free-for-all.
So setting a boundary, even with yourself, but we can set a boundary with our child too, and say, this is how long you get to do it. That you get to perseverate on this thing, and then it's done. Well, I kind of like
participating.
I sort of feel like I need to be laying on a couch. This has been like a really good session, Evelyn. Thank you for Therapy 101 for Shannon. I feel better about everything. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk about some more topics, less about my child and more about children in general. Stick with us.
I'm Adele Nadowski, Director and Co-Creator of Skills. CARD e-learning is an online tool that has been developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD e-learning is the training that is delivered to the ABA therapists at CARD to train them on the principles of applied behavior analysis and to equip them with the knowledge they need to essentially deliver the ABA-based techniques during their therapy with the children that they work with. ABA has been proven scientifically to be the most effective intervention for children with autism. At this point, even the Surgeon General has come out with a statement suggesting just that. So we know that this is something that children with autism definitely need if they're going to improve and live the lives that we're hoping that they're going to be able to live. By being able to train people on this one particular method that we know works, and to be able to have all of your staff within your school settings on the same page, it allows you to take more of a multidisciplinary approach, and there's definite consistency going on within the team. It makes sure that every person involved with that child's treatment program, including the speech and language pathologist, the occupational therapist, the teachers, the aides, all of these individuals to be able to be trained so that they can all work together effectively with the child. Parents that are using CARD e-learning can use it either to train themselves, and then after having done that they can implement different techniques with their child in order to teach new skills. But oftentimes parents might also be working either with an ABA provider, with a school, or they may have even hired their own therapist to deliver the intervention techniques. So CARD e-learning can be used either to collaborate with your school. It can also be used to train the therapists that are coming to the home of the parents, or it can also be shared with the ABA provider so that that provider can find out about it and perhaps implement it within their organization and train their staff. You can also do reporting for your organization. So you can actually look and find out which teachers are progressing, what their quiz scores are, and actually we can give you reports as well that will help you to compare the different teachers and their performances. CARD e-learning is really, really simple to use. You can log on to this as long as you have a computer, that's all you need, and an internet connection. And you can work on it any time of the day, anywhere that you're at. When you log on, you realize that right away. First of all, on the top of the page, there's a navigational tutorial. It's a how to use this page button. Simply by watching that video, it'll all kind of unfold in front of you, and it becomes extremely self-explanatory. CARD e-learning has 9 modules, and you can basically go through those at your own pace. You're going to be watching videos that are kind of like a storyboard with narration, but in addition to that, there's many different video clips of therapists actually implementing the techniques that are being described within the storyboard that you can also watch. And then of course you're able to pause, you're able to type notes right directly underneath the video that you're watching. You can save your notes, you can review them, and between each module you do take a quiz, and once you pass that quiz you can go on to the next module. And then after you complete all of them, you have a final exam. And by completing the final exam and passing with a score of 85% or better, you will be given a certificate of completion. Let me show you how easy it is to use CARD e-learning.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. I'm here with the wonderful Evelyn Gould. We've been talking about topics having to do with parenting and frustrating things. And myself in particular, I've been a little frustrated the last couple days. It's the beginning of summer break. Yes, I'm going to make it. And in any case, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about compliance, because we like to talk about that here, because I always say compliance equals everything. When we have compliance, it's the best of times. And when we don't have compliance, it's the worst of times. And if we don't want to be in a Dickens novel, and, you know, things change in the summer. Schedules change, our perceptions, our expectations change. For the kids, things change. Who they have access to changes a little bit. When they have to go to bed changes a little bit. How they eat changes a little. A lot of changes that happen. And I think it's not unusual that we see a shift in compliance one way or the other. But give us an idea of some things to remember for compliance, or what kinds of things to do when we see compliance go out the door with wings.
Well, I mean, I think just what you've just said, being aware of, like, if you suddenly see your kid, the compliance level like going down, like thinking about what's happening around you and what might be the reason for that. Like if you're going from like a very structured time, like school, you know, at this time this happens, then we go to school, then we do this, then we do that, to like summer where there's no school and there's no structure, then, you know, being aware of that can change things quite a lot. Or if there's different people coming in and out, like sometimes when you see like a change in therapists coming on or anything like that, and that can cause changes in compliance. But just don't freak out, because if you had it, you can get it back. Okay. So what you might need to do is just take a step back and regain compliance. So maybe it's about putting other things on hold and being like, okay, we need to get compliance, and that's got to be our goal for the next week or two. Because if you don't have compliance, you don't have your child doing what you want them to do, you can't really achieve anything. So it's kind of almost a bit pointless trying to continue to teach your kids skills or to work on other things if you don't have compliance, because you're also giving your child then an opportunity to practice not doing things the right way.
Right.
And you really don't want that. You want to limit the amount of time that someone's practicing doing it the wrong way, because it's going to be a lot harder for them to do it the right way. You're going to have less opportunity to reinforce the behaviours that you want. Does that make sense?
It totally does.
So when you first start trying to get compliance, you basically want to start by creating opportunities for your kid to comply, which sounds like, you know, confusing, because you're like, but I don't have compliance. But you just don't have compliance with these things that you want. So you can get compliance from your kid, but it's kind of tricking them into complying. So present them with something that you know they're going to comply with, like, would you go get your video game from the cupboard? And you know they want to get the video game anyway, so they're definitely going to comply with that instruction, and then you can reward them for that. Or ask them to do something really simple. Like sometimes what we do with some kids is we ask them, say, to touch their heads or something like that, which is something that they've mastered already. They have no problem with doing that. It's really easy for them, and it doesn't require a lot of effort, and you can kind of get them back into the rhythm of complying by just saying, touch your head or do this. And then they'll imitate or whatever, and you can be like, yay, good job complying or whatever, you know, you're doing as you're told or whatever, and you're reinforcing the compliance. And so you want to go from just creating as many opportunities as you can for your kid to comply, and reinforcing compliance, reinforce, and then you'll gradually start to ask them slightly more challenging, or maybe things that they're maybe not quite as comfortable with or whatever, and build back up slowly to asking them to do the things that you're frustrated about.
It's exhausting.
It is.
But it works.
It does.
And the thing that I always have to remind myself is, because I go, oh, really? Do I have to go back? But if I don't, I'm going to be twice as exhausted.
Yes.
And that's, if I can just get my mind around to that, then I'm always willing to spend a little bit of time for the big payoff. But I think that's the hardest part as a parent, even though I already know that it works. You know, how many times have I seen it at this time of the game? But in the moment, it's hard to get myself to that, to remind myself, wait a second, if I take 2 minutes now and work on this, it's going to have a bigger payoff down the road.
Yeah, and sometimes it's thinking about your behaviour and what's changed in your behaviour while you've lost the compliance, because sometimes what I see, like particularly in behaviour management plans, like the child starts to do very well, and the parents are really delighted, but because it's almost like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know, you can't just stop doing the behaviour plan, or you don't just stop reinforcing the behaviour you want just because your child's doing it. It's like, oh, they're doing it now, we don't need to use those tokens anymore. And I don't think it's as thought out as that at all. I think it's just what happens. Like, so
I think you're exactly right.
It's almost like taking it for granted in a way. Like as soon as your child starts to be really consistently behaving well or whatever, that you just kind of let it go, and the reinforcement goes out the window, and then all of a sudden the behaviour comes back, or the kid starts engaging in another problem behaviour, and they're like, why is this happening? And then you realise that, oh, well, it's because you're not maintaining it. You know, the tokens went out the window, or you're not attending to the behaviour, the appropriate behaviours, you're just concentrating on the inappropriate behaviours and so on. So like just thinking about, well, what have I changed? Maybe you got distracted a lot, maybe you've been really busy, or whatever it is, just thinking about that.
I absolutely think you've hit the nail on the head, because I am the queen of doing something and it works, and I go, great, that works, now I can stop doing it.
But it's working because you were doing it. That's the problem.
Exactly. So it's the maintaining, whether it's, me exercising, or me having something that I do that rewards compliance, or me having the basket of snacks on the counter and then removing it. Worked, so the basket went away. Duh.
And so and often that is what happens when we see like inappropriate behaviours coming back, or like non-compliance. It's because people stopped doing things that were working.
Okay. That's a huge aha for me. The light bulbs just went off. I have work to do. But that makes total sense.
Another thing that can go wrong is if you, say for example, if you're using token systems or something, and it's not that you stopped using them, but maybe you just got really excited, overly excited, and sort of decreased the reinforcement a bit too fast. Like you basically were fading out your reinforcement a bit too fast, and it wasn't enough to sustain the behaviour or, you know, really ingrain the habit or whatever there. So thinking about that too.
Yeah.
You maybe just got to, just kind of ran away with yourself, you know. We all do it.
Growing a patience bone, as we call it. Grow that patience bone.
And it is about patience. A lot of, like, I'm sure, Shannon, you know, a lot of this stuff is about being really patient, and things don't happen fast, but the fast is not always better because you don't get the kind of, if you do it properly and steadily and you really develop a habit, and then it's a lot harder to get rid of that behavior again.
Yeah. Wow, really amazing. Now my head is full of thoughts. Things that I'm going, oh, yep, oh, there, oh, yeah, let that go too. And the fact that, you know, we at school, my son has a very structured environment, and he has a token economy, and he goes through his day until 3 o'clock, and at the end of 3 o'clock, he gets a reward if he has a certain number of tokens. And we just came home, and this is really the first summer, because at this point last year he had stopped classes, but he still had 1 week of therapy left. So it's the first time that we've gone directly from school to summer with nothing in between. So there is no token. There's no, we haven't set up any structure for him that, you know, at this point of the day, you've done well. We're going to take a, you know, a measure of, and if you've done well, you get reinforced. And I, you know, as much as I know, and I don't know why that didn't occur to me before, that that's not a good plan.
No. I was just sitting here thinking, like, it's funny how we do all this stuff without even thinking about it.
Yes.
It's really funny. And like I was thinking about tests and like this idea of when you cram for a test, and you can cram like 2 days and then take a test and do very well. So you've achieved the behaviour, but if you don't do something more longer term, that information's just in the ear and out the ear.
Right.
And I can think, like, pretty much everything I ever studied in school was in the ear and out the ear, and I couldn't tell you anything about maths or physics or anything like that. But the stuff that I've continued to make myself study long term is what stays with you, and that's habit. So we can't expect our kids to, you know, reinforce, yay, they did it. Okay, that's where it's done.
Right.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to maintain.
Right. And clearly, and you know, that's our topic this week, is maintaining progress. So I've had some education here today, reminded me.
And what you have to do to maintain progress is really very child specific. And with our programs at CARD and other ABA providers out there, they work very hard at, or should be working very hard at maintaining new skills, and the schedule that you kind of practice those things, or you're going to be rewarding those things, really does depend on the child. Some children maintain certain skills very well, and they don't have to practice them very much. Or if they're using them all the time, you know, if you teach a child something that they're then using all the time in their natural environment, then that's going to maintain much more easily than say something that they only need to use once a year, or a couple of times a year, or only in one particular circumstance.
Yeah, we talked before on the show that my son learned how to tie his shoes, and then, you know, and that was being maintained, and then I went and bought him a pair of shoes that had Velcro. And then I bought another pair of shoes with the Velcro, so then we had to go back and teach the shoe tying.
So it's exactly the same with compliance. Like, you just have to go back a bit and establish the compliance, figure out what went wrong, and then just go back and fix it.
And there we have it. Well, Evelyn, this has been so productive for me. I learned so much today and was reminded of so much that I already knew but forgot or didn't apply, which I think I do on a regular basis. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. Hopefully you guys learned something too along the way, because this is a hard transition from school to summer.
Hard. Hard for everybody.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Well, I so appreciate you being here. I so appreciate you taking the time and always seeing it from that global perspective and allowing us as parents and me as a parent to not be perfect. I appreciate that because I'm not there. I'm not ever going to get there. I've given up on the idea of perfect, but I want to be learning, and I learned today, so thank you very much. We are going to take a break, and actually what we're going to do is show you, as I mentioned before, we're going to start Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy in just a few minutes, and one of our guests that we're going to have on today is Arthur Fleischmann, the co-author of Carly's Voice. He's a dad. You probably have seen this book on the newsstands. It's doing very well, and we're excited to have him Skyping in with us today. His daughter Carly is on the spectrum and was nonverbal, and at the age of 10 leaned over and typed into a computer, "Help, teeth hurt," and it was the beginning of her finding her voice. And they have sent some video of their journey through autism for us to take a look at, so we're going to watch that when we come back. It's pretty fascinating. And when we come back, we're going to be joined by Nancy Allspaw-Jackson for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Take a look at Carly's Voice.
You don't know what it feels like to be me. When you can't sit still because your legs feel like they're on fire, or it feels like 100 ants are crawling up your arms.
How is it that these powerful words came out of this flailing body?
People look at me and assume I am dumb because I can't talk.
How can this 14-year-old, who was written off as mentally deficient, give us a rare look into the dense forest that is autism?
It's hard to be autistic because no one understands me. What do I want? I want to be like every other kid. But I can't, because I am Carly.
Born in Toronto, Canada, Carly Fleischmann was 2 years old when it became clear she was not keeping up with her twin sister Taryn.
When you're told your child is going to be developmentally delayed, that they might achieve the developmental level of a 6-year-old, it's like being kicked in the gut.
When Arthur Fleischmann and his wife Tammy learned the diagnosis was autism, they expected the worst, that the twins were headed in different directions.
And how bad did it get for Carly, those first few years?
Awful. Part of her delays prevented her from walking, from sitting up.
It was clear that Carly, like most autistic children, was lost in her own world, perpetually swimming underwater.
And all the doctors would say, you're the parent. You should do as much as you feel you need to do for this kid.
Carly, stand up.
The Fleischmanns were on their own. They discovered that early intervention was critical.
You use your fork.
And ever since Carly was 3, her therapy has been intensive, unrelenting.
This took about 40 to 60 hours a week of one-to-one therapy. She always had about 3 to 4 therapists working with her. And if you're not getting results with one approach, you move on and you try something else.
You didn't give up. You pushed Carly.
When you look in Carly's eyes, you can see an innate intelligence. So we never gave up. We never gave up.
But if there was intelligence, Carly's ceaseless rocking, flailing arms, and tantrums hid any trace of it. Worse, she couldn't speak. Not a word.
Her profile was that of a child who was severely autistic and more than likely moderately mentally retarded.
Dr. Nicole Walton-Allen is a clinical psychologist who led Carly's therapy program.
I did not have any expectation that she would have a fluent form of communication. She was frequently jumping up, running around. Her hands were constantly in motion, flapping. She was drooling.
It got really awful. Raising a child like that in a house with 2 other children, both parents, trying to make a living and trying to keep the house going.
And did you ever think about institutionalizing her?
We had friends saying, you've been plugging away, spending thousands of dollars on therapy. You're not really seeing the progress. So, of course, you start thinking about, should she be in a group home?
But you decided against it.
I could never do it. Could never do it. How can you give up your kid?
Most frustrating was Carly's inability to speak. They desperately needed to find some way for Carly to communicate her thoughts.
So we had introduced pictures and picture symbols, which will allow her to communicate her needs.
Carly, what would you like?
Barbara Fenton Nash has been Carly's speech pathologist since she was 2 years old.
Good job. Her favorite thing is chips. So there might be a picture of chips and a brook and something else. We'd say, Carly, tell me what you want. She would point to, or she would give me the picture of chips.
Despite thousands of hours of therapy over months and years, Carly's progress was excruciatingly slow until one day 3 years ago when Carly was 11.
And she was quite distressed, and she went to her computer and she starts to spell H-U-R, and it was like T. Hurt. Hurt. So we thought, okay, something's going on. And then a little bit later on, she spells H-E-L, and we kind of pushed her to finish, and she puts P, so she spells help. Shortly afterwards, she sort of got up, went behind the couch, and she threw up. So obviously something was really bothering her. And to us, that was a breakthrough moment because we hadn't specifically taught her the words.
So what did this tell you?
It told us that there was a lot more going on there than we knew, and that obviously she was able to spell to communicate her needs.
After 9 years of intensive therapy and not much to show for it, Fenton Nash and another aide were shocked. Carly was finally emerging out of her silent world.
So there was a whole sort of window of opportunity that was open now. And when I had to communicate this to her family, I think, everyone was, happily, but also in shock.
And at first we didn't believe it. Knowing this child for 10 years and never seeing her write a thing, to seeing her type, of course you're going to be skeptical.
But they didn't believe you.
They trusted that we would be telling the truth, but they found this so incredible. And it didn't end there.
And for good reason. Carly refused to type for her family and the other therapists.
So it made us look like we had created something that really wasn't true.
Nobody outside of two people had ever seen it. And yet you're going to tell me she types words? I don't think so.
Walton Allen and the rest of her team felt nothing had changed and continued to believe that Carly was mentally deficient.
She would strip off her clothes. She would go into the bathroom and she would engage in fecal smearing. So the typing was great, but no one could see it.
Come on, let's go.
She wanted to see proof. What was needed was some tough love.
Here, show me. Which one?
If Carly wanted something, she not only had to type, she had to behave.
Okay, first type, and then you get. Let's go.
Oh, she had to work for it. If she wanted information, if she wanted to go somewhere, she had to type by herself.
And it took a long time for her to trust other people until she would finally start to spell for other people.
And what came through her finger, typing one letter at a time, was simply remarkable.
I am autistic, but that's not who I am. Take time to know me before you judge me.
And when we come back, Carly's parents finally meet the daughter they never knew through her words that will leave you in awe. Next.
Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon Penrod.
And I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson, and we were just watching a piece about Carly's voice, Arthur Fleischmann, who's going to be joining us later.
Yes.
Carly's dad.
Yep.
And
here,
for those
Carly's
of you
voice.
that were watching that segment, we are very excited to talk to Arthur about his journey with his daughter. And, I'm going to be learning about it because we just got this book in. I met Arthur at the Autism Speaks walk. And just an incredible journey he's had with his daughter.
And it's a beautiful book. I read an excerpt from it earlier. Absolutely amazing, and I think very hopeful to a lot of parents.
Yes.
And in Carly's own words, talking about finding your voice and how we can help all of our children to find their voice.
Yeah.
That it's going to be different for different kids. And
it is. And, I love to hear from parents about their individual journeys because, I think so many times we think we're alone. And when you hear a story like this, it's like I said to Shannon just a minute ago, wow, and we think our road is tough. Yeah. You have so many different, each person's journey is individual, and that's not to minimize. You may have a child with Asperger's, you may have a child with high-functioning autism. It doesn't mean it's any less difficult than having a nonverbal child with severe autism. We all have our crosses to bear, so to speak. But by hearing these different stories from different levels, you know, of parents who have different levels of children on this spectrum. I think we all share that hope, that desire to help our children be the best they can be.
Yeah, reach their fullest potential. And I think it reminds us to be grateful for some of the things that we have.
That we do have. Gratitude is so important.
Absolutely.
And to realize, you know, it can always be worse. And we do have a lot of resources. And if you're watching us, we're a resource for you, right, Shannon?
That's right, absolutely. We're here to provide information and track down answers.
Yeah. So what's in the news?
Well, this really caught my attention that there's a new study that was done about using preschool teachers and early education teachers as a means of screening some of our more underserved populations.
Okay.
That there, one of the things that they found in the study is that there are certain things that are warning signs of autism that maybe we're trying to get the information out about that, but in some cultures, if a child doesn't make eye contact, it's seen as a lack of respect. That it's not just a child who isn't able. So in some cultures, if a child's doing that, the parent is going to be frustrated and unhappy and feel like the child's not respecting them. Whereas in other cultures, people are going to recognize and say, this is a problem, I need to get my child to a doctor.
Okay.
So what they were experimenting with is asking, preparing and training teachers of very young school-age children, whether it's preschool or kindergarten, to be able to appropriately see the warning signs and to be able to fill out an MCAT survey and accurately identify children who needed a further diagnosis. They had preschool teachers do it and they had parents do it, and they saw that overwhelmingly parents were not a good judge of whether the child needed more to be done.
Interesting, because I think a lot of times it's a function of denial.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's an emotional thing for parents and the parents, but you know, at the end of the day, the parents weren't the good judge, but they found that overwhelmingly, if they gave the right information to the preschool teachers and the early education teachers, that they were a very good judge of identifying who in the classroom needed further evaluation.
You know, it's interesting too, because they've got the markers of the other children to judge by.
Yeah.
So that's really important. I know for me, I was a first-time mom at the age of 46. Hello. I didn't really know anything about babies and toddlers. I had not been around that many of them. And I didn't know what was appropriate. You know, Wyatt met all of his developmental markers up until about the age of 1.5 years, too. And, well, probably about 1.5 years, we started to see decline. But I didn't know. I thought, this must be the terrible twos.
Right.
And you really don't go to your pediatrician that often. You go in for 15 minutes.
Right.
And actually, at his preschool, which he started going to, you know, like Mommy and Me at 2, nobody picked up on it. They said, well, he might have some behavioral issues. We did get a shadow to go with him, but nobody used the A word, I guess by law.
Right.
And that was a real disservice to us, because if somebody had only said, get an evaluation when he was 2, as opposed to telling me that when he was 3.
Yeah. Absolutely, the time lost. It's the thing that I think we all carry around the rock in our stomach.
Right.
And I think, you know, what's interesting about this is that for years we've all said, why aren't the pediatricians being more proactive? Why aren't they? But for whatever reason, it doesn't improve. And maybe this is a solution to it. Because
to have teachers be more involved.
Yes.
And if you can't say, you know, you don't have to say, I think your child has autism. Those are very, very difficult words. But you can say, I think your child needs an assessment.
Right, absolutely. And they're saying that in this case, it's not that the teacher absolutely diagnosing, but earmarking that this child needs further assessment done that can be put to the parents. I just think it's interesting because when the parents go to the pediatrician is asking, so does your child do this? Does your child do that? They don't put your child through a battery of tests. And if the parents say yes, 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 then the pediatrician is going to say there's no problem. Whereas in the case of preschool and early education, they're going to be judging for themselves if the child does that. So I think that it's exciting, and I'm hoping that what it does is it allows for these teachers to be educated, and I think that's a really great thing.
Right.
If we could move towards that. So I'm very excited about that. And then, of course, we had a new study that shows something that I think we're all pretty aware of, but really calls to attention that there is some healthcare disparities with our children on the autism spectrum. That our kids are more likely to need more services, and yet what they're finding is that quite the contrary is happening. That they're not having as much access to specialized services, that they're not being looked at as a whole child and getting all the things that they need. Something for us to be aware of when we're talking to our pediatricians, when we're accessing medical care for our children, that they need more, and instead they're actually getting less. So, I don't know about you, but when we had to go through several different pediatricians because I was changing jobs and a lot of stuff was changing, and I found myself kind of repeatedly having to say to newer pediatricians, okay, I've told you this child has an autism diagnosis, but I need for you to see this kid, and don't not do something because you're poo-pooing it and thinking, oh, that's in the autism column. We're not sticking anything in the autism column. Right. Look at my child, and if he walked in here without that diagnosis, what would you be doing?
Right. What medical issues are there? And we know that that children with ASD are at risk for some conditions like seizures,
absolutely,
sleep disturbances, gastrointestinal problems,
absolutely,
asthma. So these kinds of medical conditions need treatment in and of themselves. And they can't just be, well, that's part of the autism, let them deal with that.
If you've got a child who's pushing on their stomach and rocking and constantly leaning over something to push on their stomach, we see a lot of times pediatricians saying, oh, well, that's just the autism. Quite the contrary. Time to consider taking your child to see a GI doctor, and there are lots of different things that are along those kinds of lines, where doctors, pediatricians will say, oh, well, that's the autism. Be a strong advocate for your child and don't let that happen to your child. Force them to see your child as a whole, or get a new doctor.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Okay. So just some of the interesting stories that are out there, but I'm really excited that we're going to have an opportunity to talk to the author of Carly's Voice. Our Arthur Fleischmann is going to be joining us via Skype. We're going to take a short break.
He's coming to us from Canada, I believe, from Toronto.
Yes, we're international today.
Yes,
Isn't that
we
exciting? So we're going to be talking to him. You also have the opportunity to participate in the conversation. Want to remind you that if you're watching us on autism-live.com right now, you can, the question box is active. You don't have to log in. There's not a cost. You can just type in your question, and we'll be happy to ask Mr. Fleischmann your question. If you're watching us in a rebroadcast, you can email your questions in, and we'll still hunt down the answers for you. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by our special guest, Arthur Fleischmann. Stick with us.
When Maddie was diagnosed, I'll be honest, I was very ignorant on what autism was. I knew that autism was basically something that hit boys at the age of 2 to 3 and shut down. And sometimes you think of the typical Rain Man movie. And with Maddie, she was doing all the same signs and symptoms of a typical child with autism spectrum disorder.
Stand up.
She didn't even acknowledge us coming into the room. She had barely any eye contact. She didn't interact with her sisters. She didn't really do anything. She just basically lined up her toys, and that was about it. We have a team of 7 volunteers, or 8 now. We have 8 volunteers, including my husband and I. And I'm the team leader, and so I do all the curriculum and get everything ready each week.
Jana was downstairs until 11 o'clock at night working on curriculum, going through 2 different textbooks. And then we, as a group, meet on Monday nights, and we would go through what the curriculum was from Jana. And a lot of times we would go, well, how exactly do you do that? How do you sit her at the table and do this trial base? What Skills has done for us, it's taken that away from Jana trying to figure out the curriculum for one. She can go down, or even our laptop, and she can sit down and through all these questions, it comes up with the different programs.
At least for me, it was a relief off my shoulders. I was worried that I might be missing something. Missing a curriculum that maybe she needs to know, where Skills, they have every possible thing your child needs to know from 0 to 7 they have a program for that.
What noise is this?
Good job.
Every program that we did with her, I knew it was specific for what she needed to learn. Because before skills, it was a lot of, okay, well, is that really age appropriate for a 2-year-old? You know, because it's not generalized. It's anywhere from 0 to 7. This is what your child needs to know in most manuals you'll find. But for this, okay, yep, she should be learning this. And no, she's not 4 yet. She doesn't need to know that yet.
We are so fortunate that Jana was able to attend a conference put on by CARD that opened the door for skills, and that there's no looking back for us.
We started using the program in November. It seemed like by January something just clicked, and she has completely kind of came out of her fog that she was in for quite a while.
I have never read a documented case on any child that has not benefited anything from applied behavior analysis, and now with this new skills and being, you know, like the E version of ABA, I can't imagine it doing anything harmful to their child. It's nothing but exponential growth for us.
To see her now, it just blows us away. I mean, we call her our little miracle child because in 7 months' time, she has just blossomed into this normal, functioning child, and suddenly, we joke about it all the time, like suddenly we have twins.
If you're even thinking about doing it, do it. Because the absolute worst thing you can do is do nothing at all. And even if you use this program and it's just a single mom or a single dad working in the evenings with their child, this program is going to benefit them. It's going to show you where they are, it's going to show you where they need to go, and it's going to show you what skills and how to get there. It is an online book on how to help recover your child.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Ospaugh-Jackson.
I'm Shannon Penrod, and we have a special guest right now.
Yes, we do. We have the co-author, I should say, of Carly's Voice. Arthur Fleischmann is joining us from Toronto, Canada. Is that right, Arthur?
That's correct. Hi.
Hi.
There he is.
How are you today? Good. We were just...
soup here.
Oh, okay. We were just looking at the 2020 piece.
Yeah.
And quite an inspirational journey, I have to say, just in the beginning. But we're going to go back to the very beginning.
Yes, and so you have these 3 children. You had twin girls, and when did you first know that Carly was a little different?
I think we probably sensed it pretty much immediately. I mean, Carly didn't look a lot like her twin. You know, it's a little bit hard with newborns. They're so funny looking anyhow. You know, I love how parents always say how beautiful their baby is. They're not beautiful. You know, newborns are not beautiful. But we could tell within the first couple of months as Taryn developed that Carly was developing quite differently, and she almost immediately started missing milestones. She had, a little bit more of a hazy look in her eyes. So I think we probably knew by month 3 or 4 something was amiss. Yeah.
And I gotta say, in the book you detail that when you had your first child, it wasn't a typical experience either, that your child had to have a pretty extensive surgery fairly early.
Yeah, we like drama in my family.
Yeah. And then you needed some help and support in having the successful pregnancy with the twins. And so I thought it was really interesting that you expressed in the book that you kind of felt like you were owed a really simple experience. That you were going to have the twins, and that it was, you in your karma bank, that it was going to be all hearts and flowers and roses, and it didn't end up that way at all.
No, very arrogant of me, wasn't it?
No, I think I really related to that, quite honestly, thinking, well, if things have been difficult, that maybe an easier time is going to come. But quite the contrary, you guys had a tough road.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know if there's any karmic forces at play here, but yeah, you do sort of expect that if you get struck by lightning once, you won't get nailed again. But then again, maybe if you have a lot of ferrous in your blood, you keep getting hit by hit by lightning. And I think maybe there's just something about our DNA and chemistry that that led to the challenges that Tammy's had with her health, and then of course Carly and son had as a small child.
But at some point, you began to realize that there were things going on with Carly, that she was going to need some extra support. How long did it take you? How exhaustive was it in finding and getting a diagnosis?
The diagnosis part was not particularly hard. Particularly my wife, I would say, of the two of us, is much more, a student of science. And when she saw something amiss with Carly, she very quickly went into research mode. It wasn't quite as easy then. I think Google maybe was around, I don't recall, but she certainly did a fair bit of research, and she's the one who came back and said, I'll bet you our kid has autism. And we connected with 2 developmental pediatricians and a psychologist. We actually got 3 independent diagnoses fairly quickly at age 2.
Okay.
And so that, we knew right off the bat that your best bet is to get your child diagnosed quickly, because that's really the only way to access the services on one hand. And on the other hand, if you don't start young, you don't get the same impact. So getting the diagnosis was not hard, although what we were told is Carly wasn't a garden variety of autism. I think what we know today is there's no such thing as a garden variety of autism. But what we were told in those days 15 years ago, she didn't have garden variety of autism. And so we just kept looking for other conditions, whether it be Fragile X or something else going on, because we were told that she was severely cognitively delayed, that she had oral motor apraxia, so she wouldn't be able to speak. And so we figured maybe there was something in addition. In fact, now that I think about it, one of the developmental pediatricians said, we don't want you to be too focused on the autism because we think there's other stuff going on here, and we're afraid to miss it if you only focus on the autism.
Wow. Okay, so she was,
but thought about that.
Was she completely nonverbal then at 2?
Yeah, she, she had a few words between, I'd say, the ages of 2 and I'll say 6. She could sort of approximate the word juice and, mama and dada, but only with a lot of speech language therapy. It certainly wasn't coming naturally to her. It was clear right away that verbal communication was not going to be her primary means of communication.
And so did you get to a point where you thought, this is just how it's going to be and we're never going to be able to communicate with our child? Had you gotten to acceptance on that, or can anyone ever get to acceptance on that?
Well, I think, the first 7 or 8 years were the fixed Carly years, as we called it, where we truly believed that there was some button we could press that would alleviate some of the challenges and suffering that we were witnessing. Though I think in our heart of hearts, Tammy and I certainly knew that she wouldn't speak. I think there were other people who hoped that they might, elicit speech from her. But she was starting to learn other communication techniques, working with Barb, her speech language pathologist. She was doing very well with PECs, not so well with sign language because she's got a motor planning issue. So the intricate sign, she even today does some very basic signs, but the more intricate signs she can't do. So we knew that she could communicate. It was cumbersome, the stacks of pictures and the PECs decks. And
she wasn't using computer-assisted technology at that time?
Not at that time. Not at I'd say ages, 4, 5, 6. I think we started to introduce Dynavox machines probably right around there.
Right.
But they were so cumbersome. They actually frustrated her more than anything. You'd press one picture and another word you'd press carrots and apple would pop up. Like they were just really, the technology was really
yeah, it's amazing how far we've come with technology just in the past couple of years, right? In terms of helping our nonverbal kids. What you mentioned, all the challenges and the struggles, can you kind of tell us a little bit about that, what it was like on a daily basis, what Carly's challenges were?
Yeah, they were so deeply fundamental. The speech was actually, in some ways, the easiest thing, or the lack of speech was the easiest thing to deal with. I think the hardest thing to deal with, when you saw a little bit of that in the 2020 video, she never sat still. She never stopped moving, and when she was moving, she generally was doing some sort of foraging, jumping, banging, pulling, emptying of cupboards, emptying of closets, stripping off clothes, overflowing tubs. And I don't mean like, for an hour or two. I mean 20 hours a day. Like she slept maybe 3 or 4 hours a night. And if she wasn't sleeping, she was pretty much destroying.
How was that? I mean, what was that like for you and your wife? I can't even imagine the kind of stress you were under. Can you tell us about that?
I can't even imagine. Even like when I reflect back, it's just such an incredible blur because we're so sleep deprived, and running a business and raising 2 other kids, and my wife had health issues, as you saw in the book. Through all that, we did make use. We were very fortunate. We could afford, through debt and good fortune, we could afford support in the house. So we definitely had support during the day. We would make ourselves, or we would make use of respite care. So we would have, the occasional weekend where we could sleep for a couple of days. Pretty quickly, I'd say by age, maybe 8 or 9. Well, not so quickly, I guess. By 8 or 9, we started taking vacations without Carly and leaving her with a nanny or a therapist or in respite, just so that we could go away with the other 2 and enjoy a bit of life. But no, it was really exhausting. I think you just give up a lot of the pleasures of life when you're faced with this, because even small things like having family over for dinner, there's no joy in it. It's just more work to do, right? More dishes,
right,
and more preparation. So you acknowledge you're not going to have the same life as your friends and your neighbors have, and you put your head down and you muscle through.
Right. But things did change for you, and Carly did have a huge breakthrough, and we're going to talk about that, but we're going to take a break, and in just a couple of minutes we're going to come back and talk more with Arthur Fleischmann and tell you about Carly's big breakthrough, which led to Carly's voice. So stick with us.
ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, was founded in 2004 by several passionate parents who believe that access to early, effective treatment is vital for individuals with autism. Together with Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet, the world's leading provider of therapy for autism, this group created ACT Today to do just as the name implies, take action immediately to treat autism spectrum disorders.
A lot of families and parents and even physicians don't yet accept the fact that we are recovering children with autism.
In 2006, inspired by her struggle to get treatment for her young son Wyatt, television producer and author Nancy Alspaugh Jackson and her husband Reed hosted a backyard benefit for the foundation called Denim and Diamonds for Autism. Tens of thousands of dollars were raised, and in 2008, Alspaugh Jackson took the helm of ACT Today as executive director.
This country has to come together to save a generation of children.
With a dedicated board of directors, a small but committed staff called the A-Team, as in autism, ACT Today is making a huge difference in the lives of children across the country. Grants that fund programs for behavior therapy, special needs schools, and summer camps. Medical needs like diagnostic tests and special diets. Basic safety equipment such as helmets for children who repetitively bang their heads, and fencing for those who wander. Assisted technologies and assistance dogs.
Hi, my name is Max, and I love my iPad too. It's so great. I can take photos.
In 2010, ACT for Military Families became the first national campaign to benefit military children with autism.
I'm Joe Montaigne. As a father of a daughter with autism, I know the challenges that brings.
ACT Today continues to educate and raise national awareness on the need for early and intensive intervention for an epidemic that affects at least 1 in 110 children.
I called on November 1st. And I'm like, how am I going to get notified? How are you going to let me know? And they ended up looking and they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above.
ACT Today, fulfilling its mission of helping families with autism, one child at a time.
We're back with Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, and we have been speaking with Arthur Fleischmann, and we were just talking over the break, sharing our stories with him about our children, Jim and Wyatt, and our journeys. Yes. And that's what we're doing here. We're really sharing our life journeys with our children, and in hopes that our stories will help you at home. And this is a really, truly remarkable story. Arthur Fleischmann is sharing with us Carly's voice, his journey with his daughter Carly, who's the co-author of the book, who is nonverbal. And we were getting ready, Shannon, you were getting to the breakthrough.
Yes. So when she was 10, tell us what happened, the big breakthrough.
So, as I mentioned, we had abandoned the notion that family vacations were actually any good for anybody, and Tammy and I took the other two away to the Grand Canyon for spring break, and we were away, and we were driving down from the canyon rim back toward Flagstaff, and the phone rings, the cell phone rings, and it was Howie, and he's all sort of breathless and excited, and he said, you know, Carly's been typing today. And I didn't really totally understand. I mean, we'd seen her typing on her, at that point she did absolutely have a, it was either, I think it was a Dynavox or something. It was, you know, one of those, it was a precursor to an iPad, basically. Right. So it had all those images on it, but it also had a keyboard on the screen. And as I understand from Carly and from Barb and Howie, she wasn't feeling well, and she didn't quite have the exact words to describe how she felt, so she typed, "Help, teeth hurt." And ultimately she threw up, and she was running a little bit of a fever, and she just, you know, she was sick. And, you know, I'm not sure we totally, I don't want to say we didn't believe, but I'm not sure we totally embraced the power of what we had just heard, because, you know, 3,000 miles away, and we didn't see it ourselves, and it didn't quite compute because Carly was so, you know, we knew that she had some measure of intelligence, and we knew that she could point to pictures and images. We even knew she could point to a couple of letters, like if you put, you know, CAT and DOG, and you said point to dog, you know, she could point to dog fairly reliably. But we never had any sense that she could spontaneously write words that you know, she hadn't been taught. And that was really the opening of, I won't say it was a floodgate, because it was a trickle. For about a year, her writing was very, you know, sporadic and fairly short and quite functional, but it opened up a whole new world for her, and certainly for us.
It's amazing, and offers so much hope for so many people who are out there whose children have not yet found their voice. But Carly is now someone who is very prolific, excuse me, and you were saying before we had you on that she's quite social networking savvy, and has the opportunity to talk to, for people to ask questions from time to time, and which is quite amazing. What is your experience of Carly now?
Well, you know, it's been a very long, slow progression. I don't want anyone to think that there was some sort of, you know, act of God or miracle here. She worked very hard to get to the point that she even knew what letters strung together meant, and as she talks about in her final chapter of the book, maybe we'll come back to that, but what she calls her inner voice, and the ability to process information and process sound and process words. But, you know, between the ages of, say, 10 and 13, she started to string together more than just simple requests, like, you know, I want juice, or let's go for a walk, or, you know, give me cookies or whatever. And she started to show a sense of humor, and she started to show a remarkable awareness of pop culture and current events. And when it was time for her to have a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, her speech pathologist said, you know, at 12 or 13, you know, Jewish kids have a bar bat mitzvah. Usually they write something. We think you should write something, a speech or a letter or something. And so that was her first serious piece of writing. It was about a 10-minute speech, so it was about 6 pages long. And then she, with her pushing, we made our way to Ellen DeGeneres, who she wanted to have read the speech for her on video. And we successfully petitioned Ellen to read it, and she videoed it, and we played it at the event. It was really, that to me was sort of the watershed moment. It wasn't even just the writing, it was this moment where we got to see Carly express a point of view about autism and her family and the world around her, and a really important worldview to a group of 250 people, and see their reaction to her, because everyone had previously looked at her as, you know, this poor autistic girl who, you know, may end up in a group home one day. She wrote this speech, which was very powerful and very, very moving. I mean, people were laughing and crying, and they just had this experience that, you know, I can't believe your child actually has that much depth and ability to move people and motivate people. So that was really kind of the opening. And so that would be about age 13. And then it just kind of took off from there. I mean, there was a piece on 2020 about her. And social media was just taking off. A friend of ours built a little website, which we've since rebuilt. Facebook came about, Twitter came about. And because, excuse me, it was so important for Carly to express her point of view to people who would listen, social media was a natural way for this previously closed-in, silent individual to reach, you know, not just her immediate family and friends, but quite literally now millions of people, right? With 40,000 followers, and then their followers, or 36,000 Facebook followers. She reaches every day, you know, 2 or 3 million people. It's
how can our viewers connect with Carly on Facebook or Twitter or wherever?
Yeah, the best way to reach her is to follow her on her public profile on Facebook. It's Carly Fleischmann.
Okay.
C-A-R-L-Y, and Fleischmann is F as in Frank, L-E-I-S-C-H-M-A-N-N.
Okay.
And she doesn't really use her private Facebook page, so people do try to friend her, but it's just too overwhelming.
Right.
But her public page, she posts and tweets and answers questions. On Twitter, she's Carly's Voice, at Carly's Voice.
Okay. And
her website, we can chat a bit about this. We built an interactive video which will allow people to experience the world of autism. I have an ad agency here in Toronto, and my partners partnered up with a production company, and we built a really incredible interactive video that allows people to experience through Carly's eyes what 90 seconds in a coffee shop would feel like. And if you go to you can go in either way. You either can go to carlysvoice.com, which is her website.
We had that up just now.
Okay. And so you probably saw a link there to the cafe, carlyscafe.com.
Okay.
It's the experiential site. So she's got lots of different ways for people to interact and, just learn that it's not a moneymaker. There's nothing e-commerce about it. It's just a chance for people to interact with Carly and with each other. That's, the days of forums seem to be over, but Facebook walls are a great place for people to exchange information.
That's great. What an amazing thing to do to allow people to experience that world. I really, we commend you for doing that.
Absolutely.
So Carly is how old now?
Carly's 17.
She's 17. How is she doing today, and what are your hopes for her, Arthur?
So, after a couple of years, education was really challenging because as she wrote more and more, we started to see that she was, did not have a very low IQ. In fact, she had a really solid IQ and certainly solid understanding. And it was really hard to find a place that we could educate her where her behaviors could be tolerated and yet her mind could be inspired. So she went back and forth from homeschooling to ABA schools, back to homeschooling. Public schools weren't working out so well. But by about 13, or 14, she was saying, I really want to be in a public school like my sister, like Taryn. And we said, yeah, but you can't sit long enough, and she wouldn't write all the time. She would only write sort of spontaneously and very, very slowly. So to make a long story short, she was in an ABA center school, applied behavior analysis centered school for kids with autism. She was really unhappy there by the third year in. And we found a high school in our neighborhood who was willing to do a little test and just take her in for, 8 weeks at the end of the school year, just to try a class and just to see if she could sit through it. And she more than sat through it. She actually participated. It was some sort of philosophy class where they were exploring dreams and the meaning. And it was a grade 10 gifted class, so they were all advanced students. And she nailed it. Like, she just did extremely well. So by the end of that experiment, the principal said, this is going to take a lot of hard work, but let's see if we can structure a year where she takes maybe 4 classes. And that took a lot of trial and error because she has no motor planning, really very low, fine motor planning in her hands. Things like mathematics is a little tricky because she can't hold a protractor or compass, anything like that. So we figured it out, and she now takes, she's back for her, just finished her second full year in a mainstream high school. She's taking all advanced academic classes in playwriting, English, philosophy, history. She's taking like home ec and that kind of thing too to fill it in, so not every class is academic.
Right.
As I understand it, she made honor roll this year, which means her average is, I think, a way. Yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, this is certainly a lesson for everyone out there that is watching. Don't assume that a child, whatever their behaviors, whatever their symptoms, is not intelligent. Assume the opposite. Assume intelligence. This is something we hear again and again. And thank God for educators like the principal you found that said, this is going to be hard work, but we're going to do it. And that's what real educators do, right? They take on challenges and they see how to help.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to really, you've got to work hard. We are strong advocates, but Carly is an impossibly strong advocate. I mean, she wrote the petition letter to the principal when we sat down with her and said, let's strategize how to handle this meeting. She said, I got it under control. She did. She had this, she had this incredible letter written that by the time she played it, the principal just went, I can't argue with that. We have to find a way to make this work. So you really do have to advocate for yourself. If your child isn't ready to participate in that advocacy, you have to reach deep down within, or find a friend, a family member who can, who won't take no for an answer.
Yeah,
absolutely. I have to go back to the book here for a second, because the book is phenomenal. It's really wonderful. And as you mentioned, Carly writes the last chapter in the book. What really tipped the scales and inspired you to get it written down and get the book done?
So, that's a tough one. I would say it came down to a happenstance phone call. I got a call from a publisher, a guy I've never met, and just over 3 or 4 long phone conversations, I joked with my wife that I had a man crush on the guy because he was so smart and just had a really nice quality to him. So he said, I don't know that we'll buy your manuscript, but he was at Hyperion, which was part of Disney, which is part of ABC, so it was all in the same family. And after the 2020 piece aired, he said, I think you should try to explore that further, because my guess is that little 8-minute clip only tells a fraction of the story. And I said, yeah, for sure. So I talked to Carly, and at that point she was really, trying to express herself more and more. And we decided that a book was really the best way to have a long format platform for telling all aspects of Carly's story, and that people would realize there was no miracle here, because the news media captures it in 30 seconds or a minute, 3 minutes, and they make it look quite miraculous. And that's not fair to people, right? It's not fair to other families to think that, why have hope because that was just a freak accident that their kid was, so brilliant or whatever. So we wanted people to understand that our life was hell for 10 years. It's still not easy by any stretch of the imagination. Carly has very severe OCD. She types extraordinarily slowly. She has all sorts of sensory issues. It's going to be a lifelong battle. And we thought a book was a great place to really map the journey. And because we'd have time, we'd have a year to write it. Carly could write little segments of it. As it turns out, she wrote a whole chapter at the end, and then we also used a lot of her writings throughout the book. Maybe the only advantage to her being nonverbal is I've saved every conversation we have ever had.
Wow. That's great. So a lot of the book was written, or...
Well, you're making it sound easy.
No, it took a year to write it.
It took a year to write the proposal, which had 5 chapters,
right,
written in it, and then another year to write the rest of it.
Wow.
But, no, so what I mean by that is I had to write the book, but lots of conversations and narrative that you would read in a memoir, often an author has to recreate in his head.
Yes.
I could go back, and the way we had done conversations is if they were on instant messaging, I would save them, so I would see both sides. Or if the conversation was side by side, where you might ask her a question and she would answer it, very often the person with her at the end of that conversation would quickly go back in and try to type in their side of the conversation. So in most cases, we had full back and forth conversations between Barb and Carly, Howard and Carly, Barb and Howard. Like, a lot of this was documented, so I could dig through years and years of conversations, like almost like a historian, and pull out the pieces that were relevant to the storytelling.
Awesome.
How can people get this book? What's the best way, Arthur, for them to get it?
I think the best and most economical way is online. It's for sale on all major e-retailers. There are links on carlysvoice.com to all of them, Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble and all the mass retailers. I think it's in Costco now. And so I think that's probably your most economical. It's also available in an audiobook for those who are unable to read.
Great.
Find that challenging. Yeah.
And I want to know, because I was able to read a little bit last night, some of the questions that people ask Carly, and one of the things that I found fascinating, because it's what I would want to ask, is what it was like for her and when she realized that that she had this voice. And I'm not sure I'm going to get the term right, but she says something about filtering.
Yeah, she calls it audio filtering.
Audio filtering. And that she taught herself how to audio filter. I'm just wondering what you as a parent and what Carly recommends for parents who have children on the spectrum who are nonverbal. What do you guys suggest that they do to help their children to potentially audio filter themselves?
Yeah, so let's start with the definition, because it's actually not totally accurate, though, God forbid anyone should correct my daughter. She'll have nothing of that, of course. So, she calls it audio filtering. What she really means is she says that we take thousands of pictures per second with our eyes, and we hear, millions of bits of information with our ears, and even smells and physical sensation can interfere with information processing. And she uses this wonderful metaphor of being in a coffee shop at the end of the book, which is ultimately what we turned into the interactive video. And she just says, it's so hard for me to have a conversation if someone walks by with strong perfume, brushes against my arm with a rough wool coat, the whistle of the espresso maker, a good-looking barista walks by. All these things create such immense distraction that I can no longer hear the person speaking to me and understand it. So it's really sensory filtering, not just audio filtering. That being that, she talks about in the early days how sounds around her had no meaning in the beginning, and then bit by bit she could start to pick up, meaning. First, she says her sister was the first person she thinks she was able to audio filter and fully understand. And so I guess the way I see it is, probably her brain is full of static, lots of inputs, and that creates sort of static. And then in the old analog days when the televisions needed to be sort of, tuned, you used to have to turn a little knob until it comes into focus, or on your radio. I think that's kind of the way it worked with her, that, bit by bit, it started to get clearer. So the only way I can figure out what helped her is to go backward, and she'll give you some sense that she taught herself. I think the ABA helped a lot. She said it, she's like, I don't love ABA, but I do think it helped me organize my thinking.
Awesome. Wonderful.
So, I think there were probably a number of things that that contributed to her. We always spoke very clearly and slowly to her. We labeled everything, so anytime she saw a picture, she saw a word. I think there's probably a number of strategies that led to the success.
Okay, wonderful. Well, your story is so inspirational.
It's an amazing story, and there's so many lessons to be learned about tenacity, as you said, no overnight miracles, and we hope the parents out there hear that. If there's one thing you could leave us with, Arthur, what would it be? One, a closing thought to parents out there who maybe have a child who's been diagnosed with severe autism and is a nonverbal. Do you have any advice you might want to give them, or words of wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe where I'd leave you is sort of with two thoughts. One is you touched on it. One of you so rightly said, don't judge a book by its cover.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get this diagnosis, and immediately you will assume the worst because that's generally what gets played out in the press and so forth. Do prepare yourself for just an ungodly amount of work and effort, and it is absolutely worth it. Will you have the same outcomes that Carly has had? I don't know. I mean, Carly has had 40 to 60 hours of therapy a week since she was 3 years old. So, and she still continues to have it. So, that I think has been a major contributing factor, that she has so much intervention. But get your kid as much intervention as you possibly can. Speech, language, pathology. Don't ignore the communication side. And then the last thing I'd say, so obviously sign yourself up for as much effort and involvement as you can, and then don't blame yourself. Cut yourself some slack, because there's a lot of guilt and there's not a lot of time for that. You don't really, it's wasteful and it doesn't help anything. And if you need to leave your kid, in good care for some respite and go out for dinner, go out for a movie, or take a short vacation, or just take a walk, by yourself or with your partner, just do it. There's no guilt in it, and your kid will be fine. Not every day has to be perfect for them, right?
Okay.
All great advice.
Great advice, and please get the book.
Yes, get the book and visit carlysvoice.com so that you can learn more about this incredible family's journey. And thank you so much, Arthur, for being with us and for taking the time. It's really been wonderful.
It's been great speaking with you, and we wish you the best and your family, especially to Carly, and we will spread the word on your remarkable journey, and hopefully get more people to buy this book. It's so valuable. Thank you so much, Arthur.
Thank you.
Thank you for keep up the good work.
Thank you.
So much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Want to take a little break?
Yeah, we're going to take a little break and come back and
talk about some fun things.
The speed gamers.
The speed gamers, who are raising, I think they're up to 33,000. This remarkable group of young kids. We'll talk about them. And I was at the Inclusion Films Camp yesterday in San Diego for military children with autism. And I met some brilliant, talking about not assuming non-intelligence. These kids were brilliant. I loved being with them, and we'll talk about that.
Okay, so stick with us. I'm here today with Sarah Cho, who is the managing supervisor of CARD Fresno. And she's a wonderful resource, and today we're going to be talking with her about using assisted technology.
If you are a parent of a child who is primarily nonvocal and maybe has been using a type of iconic communication system, and you are recognizing that your child has really just outgrown it. It is something, they need something faster, they need something better. There's so much more that we can do in the world of augmentative devices. I am a huge fan of using augmentative device programs on cell phones and also on iPads. As you and I were chatting, we had just downloaded a really simple tap-to-talk program. So for this one, all a child would need to be able to do is just tap on what they wanted.
I want a drink.
And then that immediately pulls up a screen where there's water, juice, milk, soda, and smoothie. So maybe the child just wanted a drink of their water.
Water, please.
And it's that simple. And there's not a lot to manipulate. The child does not have to have really advanced motor skills at all.
We're seeing more and more organizations advocating getting an iPad because of all those features. But it's not just for kids who are non-vocal.
We have a lot of kids, who have significant impairment in their sensory regulation. They really are seeking visual input, auditory input, tactile input. And if they're learning to appropriately play with a cell phone or with an iPad or with a computer, it provides those levels of appropriate sensory stimulation. So you're getting appropriate sensory, hopefully leading to a decrease in some of those repetitive behaviors, and you're teaching age-appropriate play skills. You know, they have free apps even if you're working on verb use, and the child can actually scroll through the different pictures and practice talking and narrating what they see in the pictures. There's just a lot of wonderful things that you can get from devices nowadays. You know, whether we're looking at language, social, play.
For my son, it's quite the social thing. When he sees somebody else who has one, he gravitates to them and they start playing together. It really starts the conversation with the other child.
What games do you have? What apps do you have? Can I play that one? Can I see it?
Yeah. And a lot of the apps are super inexpensive or free.
Or free.
Which is, you can't be free. Free is good.
You know, so I mean, you might have that initial investment in actually purchasing an appropriate device, but then a lot of the software or things that you need, you know, are free or relatively inexpensive. There are also some really nice applications that might be a little bit more expensive, maybe like $20 or $30, where you can essentially download the entire, for example, PEC's icon library for just that little initial, you know, investment.
Welcome back. We've got so much to talk about. I want to get right to it.
We do.
Speed gamers.
The
pretty amazing.
Speed Gamers. We love this group of young video gamers. They have been helping Act Today for a couple of years now. They have in the past raised over $115,000 for Autism Care Treatment Today. Yeah, these are kids that play video games. So don't think that all kids that play video games are slackers, parents.
No way.
Because these kids are the most philanthropic, charity-minded group. They've raised more money for us than any group. We've had an individual give a donation that's very large who wants to be anonymous, but this is the largest group of, this is the biggest amount of money that any group has given us. They are at it again. They're doing a Pokemon marathon.
Right now.
Emily, can you show what they're doing? Look where they're at. Oh, Shannon.
Look at that. And so $33,772.77 right now, on the way to $50,000, which I hope they overshoot.
Oh, look at the hats they have on. Okay, let's see. I don't know who's gaming right there, but he's got something going on, like silly string on his head. And they do things. You can ask them to do amazing stunts, okay? And they will do them.
Yeah.
They'll put on a Pokemon suit and go out and do 300 push-ups. They will, I mean, the things these kids are doing are hilarious.
I've tuned in a couple of times since they started on Friday, and what I love is that they're absolutely shameless about raising the money. There was something that somebody asked them to do in the game, and they said, well, will you pay $5 for it?
Yeah, they make people,
and the person said yes, and so they did it and got the $5 pledge. So really exciting.
So go to the website, donate, watch them, support them, like them on Facebook, tweet it, share it. Their goal is 50,000. They're going till Friday night, and if I were a betting woman, I would say they're going to surpass the 50.
I think so too.
Yeah, we're at Wednesday midday. Yeah, they're gonna surpass it without a doubt. So Britt, who is the head of the Speed Gamers, your brother Chase, all the Speed Gamers over there, we love you.
Yes,
you rock.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm very impressed with them.
Yeah, so we're going to give a lot of grants out with that money.
Absolutely. It all goes for a good cause.
Okay.
Okay, so, and you were someplace yesterday.
I was in San Diego yesterday at Cox Communications. They are our partner, along with Joey Travolta with Inclusion Films, in a fabulous camp we're doing, the Inclusion Films workshop camp, summer camp for kids with autism in the military and their siblings. And I went down yesterday and spent most of the day with 40 plus kids taking this film camp. We started the day with an incredible warm-up dancing session. Then we broke up into groups, the older kids in a group, age levels, and Shannon, I was blown away by the creativity of these kids. I was telling you a little earlier about one young man in his late teens. He knew everything about the movie world, everything. Now, of course, he didn't make eye contact. Social skills, weren't necessarily what we expect. But let me tell you, this young man could tell me every Tim Burton film ever made. The Avengers, he was very, very opinionated about that.
Wonderful.
And when I asked him what he wanted to be, he said, a famous director. I want to be a famous director.
And he will be.
Yes, and kids that wanted to be animators and actors and kids that were just having fun. And I want to thank Cox Communications, our partners, and Joey Travolta just does an amazing job teaching these young people. He has such a passion for it.
Well, we had him here in the studio, and I'd never met him before, but my take on it, we sat here and talked with him for a while, and I said, boy, you're the real deal, aren't you?
He is the real
and he
deal.
said, yes, I am the real deal. And,
He is
and I knew that he knew that he was.
the real deal. And I don't know if his brother, the famous actor John, is anything like him, but I can tell you, Joey Travolta is a genuinely incredible guy, the real deal.
The real deal. And I also want to remind everybody that this is something, the military family children.
Yes.
And their siblings.
And their siblings, and it's a 2-week camp down in San Diego. We hope to do it next year.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have to raise the money for the financing for it every year.
But these kids get to go
for free.
No cost.
At no cost. For 2 weeks, they get to learn how to make movies. They're going to make a movie, and it's going to be shown at the San Diego Film Festival and on Cox Communications.
And you're going to bring back some footage for us to show on
I am. We shot some footage yesterday. I don't think it was quite ready. We're going to dedicate some time to showing you that, and
very
it's
impressive.
Just really fun.
It's, as we say, it's so wheat that they get to go for
It's so
free.
wheat.
It's
Yeah.
so wheat.
Yeah.
That's wonderful, and congratulations to you on being a part of that. And
Thank you. I'm very proud. My staff, Laura Marquand and Caitlin Fullerton and Amy Zhang, worked particularly hard in putting this together, and also thanks to the people at Cox Communications.
And to Inclusion Films, Joey Travolta.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Well, a lot going on.
A lot.
With the Speed Gamers and with Inclusion Films. So I'm really looking forward to seeing. That's life-changing for those kids.
It's
you know
life-changing. Well, actually, Joey was telling us when he was here we talked about a young woman named Danny Bowman.
Yes.
And Danny Bowman is an animator. And she started at Inclusion Films, and now she teaches animation. She's actually going next week to work with the kids in San Diego. And then there's another young man who worked at Inclusion Films. He is now an editor that Joey hired full-time, who's going to be editing the documentary about the camp down in San Diego.
Amazing.
We also, our friend, the real deal, Joe Mantegna.
Yes.
The actor. Okay, Joe has a daughter. He has 2 daughters, Mia and Gia. And Mia is on the autism spectrum. She went to the Inclusion Films camp, and she is now working as a makeup artist. And she also did a piece that aired on CBS News on her dad when he got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. So these are kids that are really working.
Yeah.
And the skills they are learning at this camp are skills they're going to use for a lifetime. Their communication skills, their social skills that are helping them, we're developing. And they're learning really vocational skills.
Absolutely.
And there are some studios that Joey is working with that are going to be hiring some of our kids.
It's really amazing. We could talk about this all day, but we're at the end of our time.
Okay.
We have to take a minute to say that as this show ends, the conversation continues. There are lots of ways to get in touch with us to tell us what kinds of stories you want to hear more about, right, Nancy?
That's right.
Email is one of the great ways you can get a hold of us. Want to remind you that you can be watching us on Blip, you can be watching us on YouTube, you can download us on iTunes, and we're also available on Ustream. So lots of different ways to get a hold of us, lots of different ways to watch us.
Spread the word. We got to get more viewers, and we want to just spread the word so we can get information out there. Like the interview you saw today with Arthur Fleischmann of Carly's Voice. I thought it was just incredible.
But we also take your questions. If you have questions about something that you want more information, or if you want to give us suggestions for the kinds of topics that you want to see covered, we're very interested in that. We really want your input, and we're not just paying lip service to that,
we're
right?
not. If you have information to share, we want to hear about it. So let us know. You know, you may end up as a guest here sitting with us or on Skype. Right?
Yeah, you can absolutely Skype in with us.
Yeah.
You don't even need an invitation to do that.
Right.
So I always enjoy this time with you. You are such a ball of fire. And I saw something on Facebook yesterday that reminded me of you and your new tattoo that it said...
Warrior.
It said, don't mess with me. I'm an autism mom and I'm a warrior.
That's right. We are. We're warriors together. So let's fight this battle together. Let's have fun. And as you always say.
Until next time, give your kiddos a hug from us.
And as I always say, catch the joy as it flies. It's fleeting. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.